Hey, can everybody hear me?
Hey, hey,
Yeah,
hey,
buddy.
hey.
Wonderful. I want to welcome you all to what I think is the 47th episode of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. We're getting a cup to close to 50 soon. We've been actually, I believe, around now we've been doing this for about a year. Hippy Dippy Roundtable every Friday. So I want to thank you guys for coming on as we get closer and closer to the big 5-0. Most of you should know the rules by now, but I will go through them anyway. So definitely since Denims has seemed to gotten a little rambunctious and has put up decorations, which I don't think I pre-approved, but I'll let it slide.
Interesting.
Yes. So the first rule, of course, is to abide by anything that is against TOS. If you violate TOS, you will be immediately ejected from the panel. I have a job to keep. Many people want to continue streaming, so please abide by TOS guidelines. The next rule is when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. I'm not talking to make a political point while hosting these panels. Everybody knows that I'm a lefty or a left-winger of some regard, but I will do my best to hold my political positions in as I moderate today. So please do not talk while I am talking. If my volume is low, you can turn it up in Discord. And if you have hearing problems, which some guests do, please do so, because I need that to moderate. The next rule is we will not be attacking anybody else's immutable characteristics. That means race, sex, gender identity, sexuality, anything like that. And unless it's the discussion explicitly about religion, religion should also be included there, unless they're using it to make a political position. Okay. Wonderful. Besides that, I also, of course, have my handy-dandy notebook, but instead of that, today I'm going to be using the local newspaper. So if you want to speak, but you have trouble on roundtables, raise your hand. I'll write your name now. Now, number one, that should not be your first resort. If you raise your hand when the discussion just started, I'm just going to look at you like you're silly, and I'm not going to acknowledge it. Give it some time, and if you can't get in there, then raise your hand, and eventually, the discussion will get over to you. Eventually. You gotta wait because I want this to be a naturally evolving conversation at most points in time. With that all out of the way, we're gonna now go into introductions. And first, we're going to start with the woman, because I'm a feminist, Denims.
Amen, brother. I'm Denims. I talk about politics on Twitch, and I'm a lefty, and that's me. Short and simple.
Wonderful. Now we're gonna throw it over to Brant.
Yo, sorry I'm showing up a little bit late, by the way. My name is Brant from Brant for Liberty.
Conservative personal responsibility, I understand.
Right, poignancy for sure. Yeah, I got caught up covering some stuff in Virginia. But yeah, my name is Brant for Liberty. I cover a lot of current events, news, different things that's happening on the internet, from personal on-the-ground journalists, and like-minded, political minds as well. We host panels and talk about what's going on in the country. But glad to be here. My bad again for showing up late.
That's okay, no worries. Now we're gonna throw it over to Hunter Biden. Oh, Hunter Avallone.
Wow,
Sorry.
put me on the spot here. I'm literally still like setting up my stuff. But yeah, hi, my name's Hunter Avallone. Former conservative turned social democrat. Looking forward to talking. Hopefully we can find some really significant disagreements so that we can scream at each other and give everyone a really good show.
Wonderful. And if you want to support Hunter, you can get his new book, A Beautiful Things, a memoir. It's a beautiful book. It's a little emotional, but I do recommend it.
By the way, Coke is as good as it sounds. Thank you.
Jesus. Now we're going to throw it over to Sprouticus.
Very ashamed of everyone before me. Hashtag justice for Danabo. Okay. Hashtag justice for Danabo. You can find me at twitch.tv/dspraticus and twitter.com/dspraticus. And I'm a constitutionalist conservative. I'm looking forward to tonight and hope we have a good conversation.
Wonderful. For those who don't know, Danabo is the person who helps me book this show. And he has also helped me get appearances on David Pakman's show and many other programs. So he is a great person. So hashtag justice for Danabo, indeed. Now we're going to throw it over to Lonerbox.
Hey, I'm Lonerbox. I make YouTube video essays and occasionally stream on Twitch and occasionally do debates.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Medicakes.
occurred
Hi,
is occurred.
I'm Maddie Cakes. I am a social democrat, lefty, neoliberal shill. I'm just on the left, and my personal ideology is pretty nuanced, and I talk about it all the time on Twitter and here on Twitch. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Preacher.
Hello, I'm Preacher570. I too say hashtag justice for Danabo, and I'm very upset at no support from the left on this. I don't know. Poor Danabo. Anyway, Preacher570 on Twitch. I do a variety of streams, political, theological, historical, whatever. I work out of the Infinity Acre Woods Discord, and you can find me over at Preacher570. Conservative.
Wonderful. That's CTV's Discord, correct?
It is, yeah.
What rank wolf are you in the wolf pack?
That's a great question. I forgot.
You're a shaman.
I'm a shaman wolf as well.
Oh, yeah, shaman, yes.
We're both shaman wolves. But now I'm going to throw it over to More Perfect Union, my favorite sovereign citizen.
Yeah, check it out. I am the More Perfect Union. I sometimes stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/the More Perfect Union. I am a constitutional constructionist conservative. I believe the Constitution means what it says, and we can agree to disagree about what we want to do as a country. But if we want to change things that aren't in the Constitution, let's all work together, find consensus to get those 38 states necessary to make it legally possible. So with that, Dylan, thanks very much for being here. I know some of you guys I haven't really talked with before, and I am definitely looking forward to this evening.
Yeah, I'm happy that you, I just want to give you one warning. Please stay out of those like compilations with a cop smashing your windows. Please stay out of that. I'd hate to see you in one of those situations for not complying on the side of the road.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, wonderful.
I think my chances of that happening are pretty thin.
Okay, just making sure. Wonderful. Now, we're going to go on to the first topic, and the first topic actually has to do with a guest we have for today's program, and it is the current president of the United States, Joe Biden, who I have with me today. So there have been conservatives who, for whatever reason, want to impeach this beautiful man I have to my left. I know it's sad. But they would impeach Mr. Joe for a number of reasons. I know Major Taylor Greene is on this route. And I wanted to know from everybody here, do you believe Joe Biden should be impeached? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Should this beautiful, blue-eyed boy be impeached? Okay.
White leg hairs.
Wonderful. Now we're going to start in the top left-hand corner with Brandt.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna come in here real hot and heavy to start it off. Yeah, I most definitely think that it's not even one singular point that you could sit and talk on why he should be impeached. There are multiple different reasons why he should have been removed. Some of them are performance-based. Some of them are the ability to perform based. I think they should have performed the 25th Amendment on him a long time ago. He's really bad from a completely different angle from what the left painted Trump was, as far as being someone who is a singular figurehead that other nations, other people look at to get a lot of the vibe of how America is. And when he looks unconfident up there, mixed with bad policy, terrible pullout in Afghanistan, the ramifications of shutting down the independence that we had from a capitalist standpoint. There's just a whole myriad of issues. I really look forward to talking to everyone on the panel about, a little more in detail and in depth on those particular reasons. But yeah, I mean, there's way too many reasons to even sit here and talk about it. I think it's pretty much a given that if they wanted to go after Trump, which maybe they did at times, maybe have a legal precedent that they could go at. I don't think they could ever get the support that they could to make it happen. Being someone who is already skeptical of any governing official, looking for a reason for them to be replaced with people that are more competent, most definitely, yes, he should have been impeached.
Okay. Next, we're going to throw it over to Denims.
Yeah, I don't think that he should be impeached. And I feel like when I was reading the article on like the reasons why people have been pushing to impeach him, a lot of these don't really seem like valid reasons. And kind of it feels like the amount of things that they've decided to pick are just like they're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that something sticks. Like I think the worst one so far has been like the nepotism claim that like Hunter Biden has like has really climbed in the ranks due to his father when like that's a very strange, I guess, a bubble to live in, that you think that Trump wasn't doing any nepotism, but Biden is definitely doing some nepotism. And the other reasons don't like, I mean, there's the COVID reasoning, but there are much more important things that are leading to people dying from COVID that have nothing to do with immigrants. So I'm going to try not to hog the floor and let other people speak.
Okay, next we're going to throw it over to Hunter himself.
So I guess I got to be here to defend my dad, huh? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, with the Donald Trump being impeached thing, or sorry, not Donald Trump, with the Joe Biden being impeached thing, it seems really silly. It seems like a very desperate attempt to just, for Republicans kind of virtue signaling to try and do their thing, especially if you just look through like why they are trying to impeach him. So, for example, they're trying to argue about the COVID thing. They're saying that Biden's allowing more immigrants in that are bringing COVID. Actually, I was just reading about even FEMA camp people are saying FEMA chief says that COVID positivity rate among migrants is less than 6%. You can also look and see that like COVID rates among the southern border are significantly lower as opposed to more inland in the country. So it doesn't seem like we're actually having a big COVID outbreak because of migrants with anything to do with Biden. The same thing even with Afghanistan. It's hilarious to see a bunch of Trump supporters crying now and saying that we should impeach Biden for doing the doing the Afghanistan pullout when Donald Trump already set the ball in motion, and Donald Trump's own people were praising Biden for this move. They praised Biden for fulfilling Trump's decision or whatever. So no, this sounds like a desperate attempt at trying to just virtue signal again for a conservative audience.
Okay, and for everybody else who doesn't know, quick plug, DylanBurnsTV will soon be selling merch, and you can pick up great products like I voted for Hunter Biden's dad at the DylanBurnsTV store soon. There's going to be some amazing products, and please do be looking out for them. Next, we're going to move them over to Sprouticus.
Okay, so I think it's hilarious that people are saying that Republicans are throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. That's exactly what the Democrats were doing to Donald Trump when he was president, trying to impeach him 2 times. It was absolutely asinine. I did warn the Democrats. I said, look, this is you guys are making impeachment a political process. You guys are ruining what impeachment is actually supposed to mean. And they didn't heed the warning. They tried to impeach him twice. And now we're here. Now it is a political process. So yes, I think Biden should be impeached. I think Biden should be impeached because it's a political process now. I'm not happy that's what it's turned into, but that has been what it turns into. And with the way he left Afghanistan, it's not the fact that we pulled out; it's the fact of how we pulled out that's the issue. So we're not saying that we shouldn't have pulled out. We're saying how he pulled out is the issue. So I don't want to hear we didn't want to pull out. No, I wanted to pull out, but in a different manner. And so anyways, yes, Biden should be impeached. And yeah.
Wonderful. Now we're going to throw it over to Lonerbox.
Okay, yeah, I think the fact that it's just like such a massive flurry of accusations and like, throwing things at the wall is just kind of indicative of the underlying reasoning behind this call to impeach Biden, which is just because it happened to Trump. It's the typical, like, you got detention, like I got detention, so you should get it as well. Like when you look through some of the reasons, like the migrant thing, migrants bringing COVID, like just bringing up the most common like xenophobic trope from like the past 100 years. It's never been the case, not since like the Great Plague. Stop saying that migrants are bringing diseases and that politicians are to blame, unless you can substantively prove it. I think the vagueness of a lot of the claims are kind of indicative. I think Brant mentioning the 25th Amendment is kind of like, I don't know, from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like you guys are just electing like decrepit furnace dodgers right, left, and center. So the kind of seems a bit vague there as well. And actually, the Trump impeachment was quite direct, wasn't it? It was because he was trying to pressure Ukraine to get information on Biden and his son. So No, it's not comparable.
Occurred is occurred.
Okay, we're now going to throw it over to Maddie Cakes, who hasn't been on the show in a while, but I'm happy to have them back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Yeah, I mean, when we look at
Occurred
the
is
case for
occurred.
impeachment, there's no valid legal rationale that would warrant any sort of impeachment trial, impeachment investigation. In the case of Donald Trump, not only was there plenty of evidence and a direct case that would make a impeachment trial legally viable, it happened twice. And that is simply just not something that is the case with Joe Biden. When looking at the grievances that were listed out by people who are pushing for impeachment, what becomes quite clear is that their main rationale is that they don't like what Joe Biden's doing. They're very sad because it doesn't align with their political ideology. And unfortunately, that just simply isn't a valid legal reason for why Joe Biden would be impeached, or whether that's even a legal avenue that should be taken seriously. It shouldn't. So no, Joe Biden should not be impeached, and it is wholly unserious to suggest that he should.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Preacher.
Yeah, I'm not going to go back to Trump. I know, Lord knows, we'll be going back on that enough later on. I'm going to say that Joe Biden's handling of the southern border sucked. Joe Biden's pullout from Afghanistan sucked. The fact that we are now looked at by allies and adversaries on the world stage as weak and confused, that's pretty horrible. However, sorry, conservatives, I do not want to see Joe Biden impeached for the simple fact that, as crappy as a politician as he is, I've never liked him. I've always thought he was nothing but a leaf in the wind, doesn't have a policy to stand on. However, he is much, much safer than Harris, and I do not want to see her sitting in that seat. I'm sorry. So, should he? I don't know. Do I want to see it? Absolutely not. I'd rather deal with something. I won't say an evil, but I would rather deal with a negative that I do know.
Now I'm going to throw it over to a more perfect union. And I got to use the bathroom really quick, and I want to use it now before the yelly starts. So I'll be right back.
Okay, so as the oldest person on the panel, I'm going to take a little bit of executive privilege. I'm just going to run out, and oddly enough, I'm not oddly enough, but I'm going to agree in principle with what Preacher is saying. Impeachment is a power that should only be reserved for the most egregious violations of oaths of office, right? There have to be actual high crimes or misdemeanors. I mean, notwithstanding what Lawrence Tribe says, it's only been used 4 times in history. Okay, and only one of those times, Nixon, was it really appropriate. The first, third, and fourth times it was used as a political weapon. Okay, the Congress actually created a law to go after Andrew Johnson. Okay, to say that if you need congressional permission or Senate permission to seat a senator, you have to have that permission to throw that guy out of office. And he fought against it, and then they charged him. Now that one failed by 1 vote, okay, but then he was later exonerated and his name cleared later on, right? Trump was impeached twice, and the evidence that was done for Trump was very scant at best, right? It was all hearsay. It was just bullshit. And the same arguments that the people that are on the left of this panel who are saying that this is, there's no evidence for Biden. There's no evidence for Biden. It was the same story with Trump, but they don't have that same view, which makes them hypocrites. Okay. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how the left is going to make the argument. Okay, that any shoddy evidence. And I will say this right now, as it sets right now, Biden has abrogated his responsibility on the southern border, but the founders were actually pretty clear. An idiot or poor performance or malfeasance of office for not an actual intentional corrupt issue, right, is not a reason to get impeached. So I agree with Preacher on this. What does stand to be potentially an issue, and the evidence remains to be seen. I'm not saying that there's evidence yet, okay? Not provable evidence. But if they can show that Biden or his family has consistently trafficked on his name or the office in which he holds, and there's some evidence, not provable evidence in court yet, but if there's some evidence to support that James Biden or Hunter Biden have trafficked on the office of the vice president or the president, then I think that there would be grounds for that. But until then, I think we just need to stop using impeachment as a political weapon to go after the opposition simply because we don't like their policies, to Maddie's point. I look forward to hearing what the rest of you guys have to say about it.
Okay, so we're gonna start on this first topic. Now, I was gonna ask who wants to start first. It seems
I'll start.
Hunter does, so I'm gonna give it to Hunter. Now, remember the rules. My main one, and the one I'm gonna push the hardest, is when I'm talking, everybody immediately stops. I'm simply trying to moderate. Do we all understand that? Okay. Take it away, Hunter Biden.
Yeah, so throughout these openings, especially from the conservatives, I've heard the talking point repeated that Biden is making us look horribly embarrassing to our international friends or whatever. I looked that up just really quick because I was actually curious and didn't know. Pew Research Center completely contradicts all of that. America's image abroad actually rebounded with the transition from Trump to Biden. So again, it's funny because conservatives complain about issues that like Donald Trump really highlighted more than anything else. So like,
do you have anything for when Afghanistan happened? Just wondering because the transition was way before Afghanistan.
He Googled it, folks. All is settled. People.
no,
Yeah,
I'm not saying
following
all
up
is
in
settled
Afghanistan?
because I Googled it, but
Once
I'm just saying that
Afghanistan
generally
happened,
speaking,
they changed.
Okay, I can look it up for that too, but this is just Pew Research generally speaking, and it
Well,
does
Pew-
show that there's
Pew
overall
is
pretty
the thing for
favorable
the-
opinions of
that's part
President
of the
Biden, especially in comparison to Donald Trump. Second of all, the migrant thing,
Not even
there
relevant. Why do you have to keep going back and comparing the current president and his actions to what the prior president did? The prior president's out of office. Okay.
we don't have to, but it's a good starting off point because it.
But
question is
you
whether
could
or not-
also
No, it's-
look at how Donald Trump was
The
rated
question is whether or
during
not
his
the current
administration. You
president-
could look at what his
Okay,
perception
Okay,
was
okay,
abroad.
stop. Okay, stop.
And you would tell us a
Stop.
different story.
Comparison
Stop.
Hey, Dylan's
Okay.
talking.
Yep. Okay.
I
so-
hear him.
Okay, yes. Can't hear me. Our Perfect Union is still going, but nobody can hear him because he's muted. So let's not talk over each other so quickly, so
That's
fast.
fair,
Okay.
but let's not conflate the issue either.
The issue of
So,
following the rules?
I mean-
no.
Is
that's
there
okay.
actually an argument about what the rest of the world thinks about Biden compared to Trump? Like,
I really
even
don't
now?
care what the rest of the world thinks
And
about
what's
America.
subjective
Yeah, it's a really
America,
huge
value.
I don't think America subcedes to other countries and what they think about us. Other countries think down upon America, and I really couldn't give a crap. And so when it comes down to this, I warned Democrats when they impeached Trump the first time. I'm like, hey guys, listen, you're setting a dangerous precedent. You're making impeachment a political process. You are not you don't have an actual impeachable offense against Trump. You just don't like Trump, orange man bad, Trump derangement syndrome, whatever you want to call it. And you are trying to impeach Trump because you disagree with the man or because you don't like the way he behaves on Twitter. And you're setting a very, very dangerous process in doing that.
His tweets were mean.
So
Own
now
that.
the issue becomes that
broke my
but you
Are
can't
you
do it
under
to
the
me.
impression
Rules for
that he
me,
was
but not
impeached
for
for
thee.
tweets?
I mean, rules for thee, but not
No.
for me, right? Rules for thee, but not for me. So when it
Is
gets
that
turned
what
around
we're
back on you
arguing?
guys, when it becomes a political process, you guys are like, oh, you can't impeach Biden because this, and this. You guys threw out the window 2 times in the past 4 years.
So when you try to use it on
Yeah.
Biden, are you saying it is a political tool that doesn't have any legal backing?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yes, it's a political tool
wait
based
a
off
second.
precedent.
The fact that Constitution provides for impeachment gives it a legal underpinning. There's a difference between what holds to be an impeachable offense. Impeachment is what the Congress says it is, the House of Representatives, and what the Senate decides to agree with to a point of convicting to 2/3 majority, right? So get out of your head whether or not there's anything that has to be legally valid or not. It's whatever the prevailing winds of the Congress and the Senate, are. Okay. The bottom line is, as I said in my opening, there have been 3 instances where impeachment was used and they failed. And they failed because they simply could not get the threshold needed in the Senate to be able to make a conviction. Regardless of whether they thought the person was right or wrong, there was not significant consensus within the Senate to provide a conviction. Therefore, it was a waste of time. Okay. And to be honest, everybody went after Trump because they were afraid that the guy would get reelected. They said it in the House of Representatives when they announced Cedric Richmond, when he announced his, no, it wasn't Cedric Richmond, but there's another congressman who said that if we don't impeach him, Donald Trump, that he will get reelected. And if it weren't, and honestly, to be the God's honest truth, if it weren't for COVID, if it weren't for that impact on the economy, okay, they knew it. Bill Maher said 4 or 5 months before COVID hit, right, before it became the pandemic, that he said, unless there's an economic collapse, Donald Trump's going to get reelected. And that's exactly what happened. We had a massive crisis. And then whoever is the president, whenever there's a massive crisis, is the guy who's going to lose the office. The Democrats didn't have to impeach Donald Trump for that.
Did that happen after 9/11? That was a massive crisis, but somehow
9/11 was
right, to be fair, it was the response to the crisis, right? We went after what we thought was the people who attacked America, right? So that's why George
Trump
Bush
was like didn't do
Well, exactly. The
nearly enough.
response to a crisis can determine whether or not you get reelected
No,
or
Trump-
not. So
yeah,
Jacinda Ardern got
Yeah,
reelected in New
here's the thing.
Zealand.
Exactly. All that proves
Exactly.
that.
Okay,
all
wait,
that
wait,
proves-
stop. Okay, that was 4 people talking at once. Okay.
Let me answer that, please.
Okay, sure.
It was almost 5.
The issue with 2001 was that was the first year of a presidency, not the 3rd year or the 4th year. Okay. The problem with COVID is it was the 4th year. And if you don't think that matters, that if you don't think that people can be assuaged by certain things, plus there was economic growth and tax cuts that went in underneath George Bush's first term that actually had a dispositive value towards him being reelected. And you can shake your head no, Maddie, but the facts are the facts.
Well, maybe Trump could have just handled COVID better then, because if you look at New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who locked down the country to fuck, got reelected. I'm not because she got reelected in 2020. Got the biggest result for a party in half a century, doing one of the biggest lockdowns on earth. So yeah,
Wait a second.
could have just
Wait a second.
handled
I think
the
it really
crisis
comes down to
properly.
just-
like-
Wait a
I think
second.
it really
You
comes
think-
down.
You think
I
that
think it
you
re-
think that if give me 1 second. You think that if Democrats were in office, they would have handled it better than Trump? Yes
I
or
don't
no?
know. That's an
COVID.
irrelevant hypothetical.
Voter box. I'm
avoided it
asking. I'm
more.
asking your personal opinion on something. Do you think if Democrats were in office, they would have handled it better than Trump?
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
I would argue
You already fucking
I would
up
argue
worse.
pretty vehemently against that because
I mean, I don't know the
when
fucking
Trump-
voting
okay,
records of these
okay, when
people. so-
Trump
Okay,
stopped
can
China
we
from-
stop that 1 moment? Okay, make sure that this does tie back to the impeachment of
It
Joe
will.
Biden, though,
It will.
because I want to make sure we don't just slide over debating if Trump was a good president or not, because that's not the conversation we're having. So Sprout,
it
you
will
can
go
finish.
Or
back.
Tower
It will go
7.
I
back.
actually have something to add
Okay,
about the original topic.
So what I'm saying is Democrats, when Trump decided to say China's not allowed in the country anymore, I'm stopping people from China from coming here. There were Democratic senators and congressmen that went to Chinatown in New York and danced around saying there's nothing to be scared of here. You're xenophobic for not allowing Chinese people to come over to the United States. They would have just openly allowed it for that extra couple of months, which would have hurt us even worse.
Joseph
and-
Robinette
that was
Biden
actually
called him
not even said.
xenophobic.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that he didn't. He called him xenophobic actually for using the term China virus or Chinese virus.
No, he was
He
called
did not
xenophobic.
actually
He
call
was
him
Wait,
xenophobic.
stop,
xenophobic.
stop,
Shutting down.
stop, stop.
Excuse me.
I
He
said-
did not
I
actually call.
said-
Excuse me. He did not actually call him xenophobic for doing any kind of lockdowns. The truth of the matter is, you can blame COVID for Donald Trump not getting reelected, and maybe COVID. You know what? Not maybe.
Why was
COVID
I the one
absolutely.
deafened?
Hold on, wait.
Wait,
COVID
okay,
absolutely.
stop,
Wait.
Why was I the one deafened when
Wait,
I
was
was
stop.
talking and he interrupted me?
Stop.
Holy
Wait.
shit.
Can we
Calm
stop for
down.
a second? I was muted. I was
Oh,
starting to
shit,
mute
man.
everybody, and then everybody started to quiet down. Okay, because people were jumping around. Continue.
Okay, I
yeah,
will continue
we can
because
talk
I was
about whether or
interrupted.
not.
Hey, I will continue because I was interrupted, then deafened. So what I am saying is that
You
Trump was
deafen all
called-
of us with your
Trump-
stupidity.
Okay,
Stop
that's
it.
awesome.
Okay, can we-
keep the ad homs
Reform.
going?
Guys, okay, we're gonna okay. Let's stop this for a second, okay, guys. So as
Listen
much
here, Augie.
okay, as much as I love the memes, we do need to have some level of decorum so we can have a conversation. I'm gonna be doing this every 5 minutes, and then I'm just gonna skip the topic. Okay, so Sprout, finish, please. You have about 30 seconds to finish. Then we'll
Okay,
move over to
awesome.
have Hunter respond to that. Then we'll go to some people who haven't talked.
Okay. Trump was most certainly called xenophobic for not allowing Chinese people to come to the United States when he stopped them from coming to the United States and immigrating to the United States and visiting the United States. He was called xenophobic for that. I could go back and grab the source if that's what you want, Hunter. But he was most certainly called xenophobic for that. And again, the impeachment trials against Trump were 100% political. It wasn't actually a violation that was indeed worthy of an impeachment trial, such as Nixon. But you guys get to play with fire, and then you get sad when you get burnt, right, by the own fire you created. So it's whatever. Just realize that you guys made this fire, and now you're sad that you're getting burned by it.
Yep.
Hunter?
I'm trying to look up if this is actually directly related here, if the xenophobic thing was.
It's
was
not.
correct
He did
here.
not call that. He like you would have to show him calling the travel ban xenophobic because Trump said a lot of xenophobic shit, and Biden.
Oh,
He
called
said
it
he
xenophobic.
he
You'd have to say
talked
it's
about
direct.
his xenophobia
How
in
come
a
every time
different
Biden comes up,
context.
it's Trump, 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 Trump?
I think
That's
a
right
more
here.
I think
Those
a more
states.
feasible reality is that he would be taken out by the 25th Amendment for not being able to perform his daily duties, and they
Yeah,
would
but
probably
that's
take him out. That would be the more realistic thing, because if they were going to get him on any kind of technicality outside of that, we'd already hear the whole of it. It'd be already being typed up on a 8chan somewhere
So
near
now-
you.
So now that we've kind of debunked the whole xenophobia thing, and we've kind of dismantled
Yeah, I wouldn't go that
Sprout's
far.
entire lying tangent,
No,
now
he
we
was
can go ahead and
definitely
move
called
on to the next
xenophobic for the
topic,
China travel
which
ban.
is
No,
excuse me.
Sprout, don't
Actually,
you
I wanted to bring up
understand?
the fact
Wait.
because this is actually something that, if anything, Sprout, you might actually really like this. So Biden administration is actually increasing border deportations and prosecutions to deter migration, and I think that this is where the
Oh, my
massive
word.
this is where the massive confusion comes
October?
along.
This
Is
is bullshit.
that there is
You're out of your league here. You're out of your league here. I'm going to tell you
Let
that
him
right
finish his
now.
point. Let him finish his point.
All right, go ahead, make
is
an ass out of
influ-
yourself.
There absolutely is
Thank
an
you.
influx. There absolutely is an influx of immigrants coming to the border. This is common, though, when you have a new president. They might believe that this new president's going to be more lax, but from what we see here,
He
that's
told
not
him.
actually the case. In
Yeah,
fact,
but he-
Biden has received a fuck ton of criticism
You
from
smoking dope
liberals.
over there?
Like, look,
I'm sorry. Do you want me to
told him
send
to
you the
come.
article?
He
I
literally
don't want
told
to send
them
me
to
anything. I
surge the
talked
border.
about this. We're actually boots
They
on the
wore
ground.
T-shirts.
I know that you guys are conservative, so you like to just make up fairy tales to tell yourself
Yeah, this is
bedtime
a fairy
stories before you
tale.
go to
All right,
bed.
bro.
But I'm reading right here from CBS News, the Biden
Oh,
administration
CBS.
is ramping up
There you go,
deportations
bro.
and
You got
prosecutions
that.
of migrants
Google
crossing the
coming
southern
through
border
again.
illegally.
Do you
amid a
disagree
Wait,
with
okay,
data?
wait. Let's.
I disagree
Can we-
with.
So
Lefty
there's
here.
literally-
Can we
Tell him what he wants to hear.
wait. Okay. So I want to hear what the article was. I
The
didn't even
con-
say in an article, and I heard somebody say Google. Okay, and I didn't even hear what the article was. Article. What
People,
was it?
people like to make fun of the Google stuff because they don't like the fact that they get fact checked in the middle of a conversation.
Okay, so-
Because
What's
again,
the,
like
okay,
I
okay,
said,
but what's the article? I want to hear the article.
Wait,
All right, so
wait. Can I
it's-
fact check then? Can I fact check
So
the middle of the conversation?
go for it.
Because
So they're
according to
Sprout,
MSN,
wait.
according to MSN.com,
Okay, Sprout. I asked him what the article was. Is your name
there
Hunter?
is a
No.
there
I
is
mean,
a
he was,
Hunter.
saying
surge.
that, he was saying that people were upset about being fact checked mid conversation. I was wondering if I
Sprout.
could fact this conversation.
Okay,
There is a
Sprout. But I
surge
asked
in-
Sprout. Who did I ask to read the article? Sprout.
There is a surge
Yeah.
of immigrants coming to the border. That is
200,000 a
undeniable. Okay.
Yeah,
No one's
200,000 a month.
arguing about this. There is a surge of immigrants coming to the border. And anything you're going to tell me, I'm
told
sure is
them to
going to say
come.
there's a 21-year high. Yes, there's COVID. There's a lot of shit going on that leads to more immigration. But with that, we're also
Idiot.
seeing record highs of migrant arrests over concerns of the Delta variant.
They're not being fucking arrested.
Biden administration
yeah,
also
very
restarted
much
expedited
17,000
removal flights for some
Seventeen-
migrant families.
Reinstated catch and release. They took away stay in
7,000
Mexico.
and-
They're putting them in cities all across the country. Are you
Do you
fucking
plan
dumb?
on,
Well, you're
do
right
you
that they
plan on
did change
backing
the
that
catch
up
and
with a
release thing, but it
source, or
also-
is your feelings your source?
17,000
nothing to do with my feelings.
Haitians.
Well,
showed
no,
up
that's
at the southern
he's
border,
right that there is
and
stuff
and
has
the
been.
Biden administration stop. 17,000 Haitians showed up at the southern border. The Biden administration said, "We're sending them all back." And then Mayorkas comes out on the Sunday shows last weekend and he says, well, 10 to 12,000 people have been, sort of put into the country. And of the 5,000 people who were remaining out of the original 17,000, are, they're in process. They fucking released 65% of the people who they said they sent back. So when the government says, with respect to immigration, that they are doing X, Y, and Z, you can take it for a fucking fact. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Okay. And if there is a valid reason now, and I said in my opening that there is no evidence to support that Biden, it should be impeached because of what's going on the border, unless you can show that they're doing it intentionally, because he has an obligation under the Constitution to ensure that full faith that he has a due care, to execute the laws faithfully of the United States. And there are immigration laws that say that you can't do what is being fucking done at the southern border. So either he's incompetent or he's
It can't be done at the border.
Sorry,
Hold
on.
Wait.
This guy's been rambling for a really long time now.
Okay,
so.
but I'm gonna let him finish. I'm giving him about 50 more seconds to finish his point.
I need 15.
I need my dinner then.
Okay, 15. Yeah.
At the end of this, right? Biden is either incompetent with his respect to immigration, or he is intentionally trying to flood the United States with illegal immigrants, because he thinks at some point that they will get amnesty like they fucking did in the 80s under Reagan. And laugh if you want, but that's a fucking real concern for people in this country.
Okay, 50 seconds. Hunter, and then Loner Box after, because he raised his hand very politely.
All right, Alice, please come out of Wonderland now. Okay, I'm about to give you a nice swift dose of reality. Actually, what's happening? Joe Biden's coming in here, and according to Center for Disaster, this is considered to be one of the swiftest, quote, swiftest large-scale expulsions of migrants or refugees in decades.
Get your head out of your ass.
Okay, so the 12,000. Hold on, wait, excuse me.
Please,
come on.
Obama was the deporter.
This guy got to ramble for like years. For a year, dude.
Please,
I want to keep was coherent and making something out of it.
Please, okay. We're trying to have some decorum here. It is Hunter's turn to speak. I gave you some time to speak. More Perfect Union. I gave you extra time. Hunter.
Okay, so again, U.S. starts mass expulsion of Haitian migrants from Texas border town. This 12,000 thing was the beginning of it. They were expelled. In all, U.S. authorities moved to expel many of the more 12,000 migrants camped around a bridge. So it's in total around 12,000. There
more are coming.
Moved to expel many of the 12,000 migrants camped around a bridge after crossing. Yes, so there are a bunch of migrants coming, but Joe Biden is responding with what is considered to be one of the swiftest and largest expulsions of migrants or refugees in decades.
Yeah, but it took him like
didn't this guy begin with saying that he likes to form his opinions by looking at history? Well, here's history for you, okay? This is historical, the response that we're seeing from Joe Biden. Okay, again, Alice, come out of Wonderland.
But if he was capable of, capable of
doing it in
October,
wait. I said Loner Box. Now, Brant, let me hear your British accent.
Hello.
Okay, close enough. Brant, then Loner Box.
Yeah, again, it's just the vagueness. Like, I think I see this coming up quite a few times when people talk about like a crisis at the border. Like they have the equivalent of that here. When they talk about a crisis at the English Channel, all it is like some nutty politician going to the fucking beach, taking a picture of one refugee boat a day. You actually have to have some like proof it. I'm looking at it here, like the stats on border crossings. They're about the same like around this year as they were at the beginning of 2019, like maybe a little bit higher. And again, this is ignoring the fact that like, what are you assuming, that people are moving over the border more often because I think Biden will be nicer to her, or because, you know, there are push factors. Right. There have been like unprecedented. There were like 2 hurricanes that swept over like 4 or 5 countries in Central Southern America. As like
COVID's a massive one.
If we're talking about impeachment, just to pull everyone back, like the claim against Trump was quite simple as far as I remember. It was like he used financial and political leverage to get help from Ukraine. Can you just do an equivalent? Can you just give us something like basic and simple? Because like I'm just hearing fucking 400 sort of
okay.
Yeah,
bullshit factoids.
I got it.
Okay, so Sprout is it's preaching the Sprout, but Sprout has an answer to that, so I'll give it to Sprout. first.
Okay.
Let me tap in.
And
on this. I
and
covered it.
while I have the mic, I kind of want to do a little bit of fact checking. February 1st, Biden sent out a tweet. And I want to make this very clear. January
this.
31st, the restrictions went into place with China, but February 1st, Biden put out a tweet, says we are in the midst of a crisis with coronavirus. We need to lead the way with science, not Donald Trump's record of hysteria, xenophobia, and fear mongering. He is the worst possible person to lead our country through a global health emergency. At that point, he clearly would have known about the restrictions that Donald Trump put into place the day before. Was still in office at that point, so he clearly would have known. So I don't want to hear any like he didn't
So all
know.
you have
Well,
is
yes, he did.
conjecture.
And so now what we're going to move on to is the idea that go ahead and rephrase
This
your idea.
has
so I don't get
nothing
it
to
wrong.
do with the travel
Go
ban.
ahead. Go
though.
ahead.
Can I
and get-
jag in?
It
Can
does.
I
It
jag
has
in?
everything
Nothing to do with
travel
banning
ban.
travel.
It has everything to do
No,
with travel ban.
he's
It says we're
talking
in the
about
midst
how
of a
it-
crisis of
Not what
coronavirus.
Donald.
We need
Hold
to
on,
lead the
can
way
I
with
explain here?
science.
He actually specifically says not Donald Trump's record of hysteria, xenophobia, and
Okay,
fear
so he was
mongering.
called
He's
xenophobic
referring-
after he was called xenophobic.
He was called
for-
xenophobic for his history of using things like China virus, trying to blame it on China, Chinese virus, yada yada. We've seen the whole thing. That's what he was talking about.
Yeah,
When he
Sprout,
says
he's
it's
talking-
record of hysteria,
Okay.
he's not
Yeah, no,
talking
it's
about
fine.
something that just
I'm just
happened.
glad that I can get interrupted and not get and get deafened, but you can
me
interrupt
tag
whenever you
in.
feel like it.
It's hard
so
not to
Loner
interrupt
Box,
when you
It's
Loner
liberal
Box, can you
media
go ahead and
bias,
rephrase
but
what you were
okay.
saying? Okay, keep talking over me and not get deafened
Can-
or muted. It's great.
can-
Loner Box, can you repeat what you
It
were
is.
saying?
Yeah, I was making the same point. It was just that you said not Donald Trump's record of hysteria, xenophobia, fear mongering. Is he referring to a record as in like Trump said something the day before and then he says this is Trump's record of xenophobia? Like, I don't know if I'm just doing like fucking 15-year-olds English close reading and shit. Like, this is nothing. This is not pointing to him calling the travel ban xenophobic. It's conjecture. You're filling in blanks.
As much as I see there, I was actually referring to what you said before that. But as much as I see there, I would argue that Joe Biden willfully knew what happened the day before with the president restrictions put in place. He willfully knew what was happening and called Donald Trump xenophobic. And
Mind reader.
It's all
Whoa.
right there.
Wow.
I mean, he's in the government. You know what happened. You know what laws are put in place when you're in the government, especially if you're in the Senate. You know what laws are put in place. It doesn't matter. And so yeah, he called Donald Trump xenophobic for putting in a China ban. And other Democrats went to Chinatown and they danced around saying, "Look, there's nothing to be scared of here." Like let's make this very clear. These things happened.
Why did he preface it with "We need to lead the way with science"?
Okay, because
isn't that because he was calling it the China virus and not the coronavirus?
Calling it the China virus is based off of.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
they shouldn't call it the Spanish flu either. We stopped doing this for that
Please
reason.
make this argument, Sprout. Hold on, wait.
Right before everybody was woke. They called it the Spanish flu. That's where they thought it came from. In this particular case,
I want to make sure that
actually came from China.
Okay.
We're taking guidelines from the 1920s.
Please make the argument. Wait, did someone just make the it came from China, so we should call it the China virus?
Where did West now
Please.
come from?
Okay.
Please
no
make
longer.
the argument. Oh, I
I'm
was
just gonna mute the whole room then. Okay. Okay. I do. This is what I'm gonna do. Okay, Loner and Sprout, I was enjoying that interaction, so continue to talk, okay? And then I'll go to the list.
I'm
This
sorry,
room's too
everyone was
unruly.
talking over you.
It's too
Everyone
unruly.
was talking-
I'm gonna the rest of this topic. It's gonna be I'm gonna mute you, and that's when you talk. I'm sorry. The room's too unruly. We now live in a state of martial law. It's like the White Terror in Taiwan now. In this chat, Loner Bucks.
Everyone was talking over you, Lonerbox, so can you repeat what you were saying before everyone rudely interrupted you?
He said we need to lead the way with science. Is it not reasonable to assume that I have just as much proof that you do to say that he was referring to him calling it the China virus instead of the coronavirus?
Okay, so if we need to lead the way with science, he wouldn't be referring to what name it was called. That's not leading the way with science. I would actually argue that policies that are put into place would be leading the way with science. And a policy that was put into place the day before was actually banning people from China from coming to the United States, in which he was called xenophobic for. He was called xenophobic for it, and Democrat senators went to Chinatown in New York and danced around saying, "Look, there's nothing to be scared of here. Why are you so scared?" And why would they go to Chinatown and dance around and say there's nothing to be scared of here? It's not going to be called xenophobic.
So 1 minute we're talking about policies, the next minute we're talking about gestures made by people who aren't Joe Biden. So what is it?
I mean, I said Democrats in general to begin this. Would you like to narrow it down to just Joe Biden? Because that wasn't my original statement.
Well, you said that Joe Biden called him xenophobic
I
for
said
imposing
no.
a travel ban on China.
My question to you was: do you think Democrats would have done a better job than Trump?
Oh
right?
yeah, just based on the behavior of every other
Then
government. It's like
okay, well then you can. I would argue against that and say Democrats called Trump xenophobic, whether indirectly or directly, over the China ban. And so
what
the
policy is that
Democrats
indicative
then
of?
theoretically wouldn't have banned China from coming to the United States, which would have upped the amount of people who
thing is,
have COVID coming to the United States.
But left-wing governments like all over the world did travel bans. Travel ban is not like a right-wing position during the pandemic. And again, you keep filling in the blanks. You keep on adding this in. Your argument only works if Biden called Trump racist or xenophobic for the travel ban, which you haven't been able to substantiate.
Another Democratic senator or congresswoman went to Chinatown and said, "Look, there's nothing to be scared of here." As she danced around in Chinatown, that would be calling Trump xenophobic indirectly. And I would also argue that I mean, I would personally argue Joe Biden's calling Trump xenophobic directly in his tweet, but there's an argument in your side that he's calling him xenophobic indirectly. So I even said in my statement, whether directly or indirectly, he was called xenophobic for his policies.
And I said he is calling him xenophobic directly. He is doing that. You just don't. You can't prove what for.
So we're just going to assume it wasn't because of the policy that was put into place the day before. We're just going to assume that this was a tweet out of random because he just randomly wanted to go after Donald Trump that morning and decide, you know what, I'm gonna do it today. I'm gonna do it today, folks.
Trump was already defiantly called. Trump had because it's Trump's record, and Trump had a record of defiantly calling it the China virus when no fucking medical expert was telling him to do that. Because that's a xenophobic decision.
Not xenophobic.
Okay. So, Preacher, you are
It
next.
absolutely is.
So, people have been unmuted. Please,
why would you do that otherwise?
Please have some level of decorum, or I'll have to meet you all again.
Okay,
Preacher, you are next on the list.
I just want to hit that real quick. It's not xenophobic because he's just saying where it came from. However, I want to go back to the whole border crisis thing because Hunter says, well, we don't want to talk about the 21-year high, but let me talk about right now what they're saying, Joe Biden doing these amazing things. Let me tell you something. Joe Biden's not doing anything amazing when it comes to the border. How do we know? Because we actually talk to people who are working the border. We talk to people who gather the stats and the data, not the emotions. Joe Biden attempted to use the FAA to ground drones so they couldn't take pictures, and that was with the Haitian migrants. He failed because A, a judge reversed it, and B, the state police let that reporter use a helicopter. He got the video anyway, and now the nation knows what's going on with 15,000 people underneath a damn bridge, which is more than the population of many small towns across this town. So yeah, now Joe Biden's doing something, but it's not what you're saying. They're still bringing them in. They're still doing catch and release. He still has not restated the stay in Mexico law. If he would do those
catch and release
things,
thing was for a more, I think it was from like immigration from the southern border, not for the Haitians specifically.
I
Even
know
if what you're saying is correct, it doesn't.
Just the
even if what
Haitians.
you're saying is correct, it doesn't really change the fact that Biden is still acting in what is historically defined now.
Oh my God,
as
you and your
one of the most swift moves and
But
expulsions
it's a
of
mess that
immigrants
he
and
helped
migrants.
create.
Second of all,
Yes,
about
thank
hold
you,
on,
Brandon.
wait.
Thank you.
Please.
Let
Come
me
on,
go.
I
and
don't
make
get
this
like more than
horrible.
3
Hold
seconds,
on.
dude.
Please.
Because I'm in the middle of talking, you cut
Please.
me off.
Why? Okay.
Because how long
Wait.
is everyone allowed to talk?
Because you come in and shit on my living room floor.
Okay. So next is gonna be Brant.
Yeah, make me
Look,
next.
We don't
Look, every
follow
day
the
I
rules?
cover the border every day, and I cover a variety of on-the-ground journalists that provide information that's more than the 2-minute little snippet that you maybe see on CNN when they're trying to save face. It's an absolute travesty at the border right now. The Haitian thing is just a big droplet compared to the hundreds, if not thousands of people a day, on pace for nearly 2 million people to cross illegally into the country. We legally take in 1 million. So twice as many. It's estimated that by the end of this calendar year, since Joe Biden got in office, so let's say the day he swore his hand into presidency, nearly 2 million people will have crossed into the country illegally. This is a problem he has helped foster, not only with his rhetoric. If we're going to go feelings-based, start talking about rhetoric that's been used here and there and stuff. Okay, I'll give a concession here that maybe Trump wasn't the most polite in delivering his feelings and thoughts. the way he talked about things. I think a lot of people on the right gather that sentiment. Sometimes some people like that type of behavior. Some people don't like that behavior. But when it comes to actual specific, tangible, non-feelings based argument here, objective facts, is that this is not only with rhetoric used, but there is statistics of a morphine drip of people that are coming in that is more, and I watch how the National Guard, the Texas National Guard, none of them, it's we can't get the Band-Aid around this fast enough right now. This is going to take an absolutely ridiculous response to clean up. And just because Biden is under an ice machine and is saying that he is catching a record number of people doesn't account for all of the people that are being released at a higher rate than what he can process. I cover this every day. I've been covering it for more than like 200 days now. And it hasn't eased up, and it's only gotten worse as people get the word across. Excuse me, by the way, as people get the word across and say, I got in and you can too, and here's a bullet point chart on how you can abuse this flaw in the system. There's going to be people that are going to keep coming, and it's going to get worse and worse until somebody logically and logistically handles this, and that is you have to have a strong border. We're not a country without a border. You're not a neighboring state without a border and your own rules and your own things like that. That's the way the rule of man is. That's the way that we're ruled. We have to have laws, and that's one that needs to be enforced. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Can I ask you a question about the law really quickly?
Okay, and then we're gonna have Denims because Denims are. I have
Denims can
everybody's.
go first.
Yeah, okay, Denims, you haven't talked yet. Also, Loner, your mic is super reverbed.
I have no idea
Petition-
why.
Can I petition that since Hunter was on server muted, that Preacher gets on server muted as
I
well?
thought Preacher was on server muted. Oh, nope. That was a mistake. Denims?
Okay, Loner, quick question. Is your question about Europe or European
no.
countries?
Yeah, that is one question. Yeah. That's
Okay,
funny,
I'll
isn't
let
it?
you go right afterward. But I see everyone is talking about like immigrants coming to the country or whatever. And like, let's all just like assume that like Biden, for at least like, let me assume for the sake of conversation, Biden is accepting all the immigrants and they're coming into all your communities. They're in your backyard. They are here and they are here to stay. No one here has like brought any evidence that this is the reason that like COVID is really bad in the US. And like no one has. No, that's the reason for the impeachment, that like Biden has exacerbated the COVID problem by bringing immigrants in.
No,
Denims, to
no,
be fair,
I
to
will
be
claim
fair,
that.
the border
to be
is
fair,
the problem.
To be fair, Denims, I only brought up Afghanistan as a reason of.
Yeah, if you brought up Afghanistan, I'm not referring to your argument. If you only are talking about Afghanistan, then like I'm not addressing that specifically. That's a completely different. I'm just talking about because the topic is about impeachment, and like obviously we can argue about immigration back and forth and whether he is and whether it's good and whether it's bad. But I do want to bring it back to like the topic of immigration and like or immigration with regard to COVID, because that's the reason people want to impeach him. And like I just am not seeing the correlation, considering the fact that like the science seems to show that it has more to do with other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I was more so putting a magnifying glass on a topic. We were talking about something that I literally cover every day. A lot of different journalists submit videos and different content towards me live, and some of it edited as well. But I don't necessarily think, like you're saying, that it is connected to a reason to impeach. I think, like I said earlier, my main route to getting him impeached would be, can he perform the duties? Is he healthy enough? Like, can he go through a cognitive test and pass?
Yeah, you're talking about the 25th Amendment and him being like senile and all these things. I just want to check. Can I get a raise? Can I get like a raise of hands for anyone here who thinks that Biden is his immigration policy is causing a bunch of brown people to come into America with COVID, and that's why he should be impeached?
No.
Okay, so no one thinks that.
I'm going
Okay.
to raise their hand on that, but that's not the question. You're asking the wrong. The question is whether or not, and I'll have this dialogue with Denims, right? Because it's her question, and I think it's a fair question to ask. The problem isn't that people are coming across the border who might have COVID. The problem is that the law says that you have to come into this country in a certain way in order to be legal. And his failure to enforce the law as George Washington says, is a failure to take due care, right?
What
To
if he?
faithfully
I just
execute the laws. And I'll throw this out there because I think it's interesting to note that that of the couple of times that the United States has really got their ass up in arms over failure to over the concept of what it would look like to fail to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, both involve taxes. In President Washington's case, it was the whiskey tax, which led to the Whiskey Rebellion, right? And in Lincoln's case, it was the tariffs on the South that led to the firing on Fort Sumter. So when the government seems to be, when the issue is that that failure to collect the taxes, let the people skate on paying taxes, the government's all too willing to go to combat for that. Okay. But when it's like protecting the southern border, doing the things that the Congress said you have to immigrate to this country in a certain way, and when you fail to do that, unless there's a tax bill associated with it, the Congress and particularly the Democratic Party, for reasons that I'm not going to elaborate too deeply here, the Democratic Party seems to be all too well, and the Republicans, oddly enough, when they're in charge, they fail to take advantage or to adhere or apply the law, because the Republicans want cheap labor to come in, because business, American Enterprise Institute, wants people to come in cheap labor, and the Democrats think that eventually somebody will get some cheap ass free friggin' amnesty like they did in the 80s under Reagan, and they'll become potentially reliable, party voters. This is why the two parties have failed to look at immigration. That said, that's not a reason to impeach Joe Biden, which is the original fucking topic.
okay.
Biden cannot be impeached for being an incompetent fuck, which everybody reasonably thinks he is. Okay? Unless you can show that the guy's done some actual malfeasance or corruption, he's going to be there. And unless you can convince 67 senators that he's an incompetent fuck for whatever reason, that's fine. The 25th Amendment notwithstanding, I think in January 2022 or 2021, next year, you're probably going to see President Harris, because they're going to find out that this guy's fucking a loopy dude and he's going to be fucking done. And they're going to try to position it so that Kamala Harris can become a president for 10 years.
Okay, Maddie. Maddie is next.
I want to turn that back over to Denims, because it was a conversation between her. I was answering her.
I'm going to be short. I just feel like if you don't like his immigration policy, that's like a different thing. And I feel bad for Dylan, because we're still talking about immigration, and I want us to talk about the other things, since none of us.
We're in. It's already going to be closed on off soon.
Since all of us agree that immigration with COVID has nothing to do with impeachment, and that's great. Also, Dylan, your thing still says starting soon. Professional streamer, by the way.
Yeah, because it hasn't started yet, apparently.
Oh,
The topic,
okay.
at least. So we're going to throw it over to Maddie.
Honestly. Yeah, so I just wanted to, I know a few folks here have been talking about how, Trump was impeached for being mean on Twitter because people didn't like what they said. In fact, he was not impeached for being mean on Twitter. He was impeached for the initial first time for pressuring a foreign head of state to conduct a politically motivated witch hunt to hurt the electoral chances of his rival candidate in the next election. So when we talk about people didn't like him because he's mean, well, yeah, a lot of people didn't like him because he was an asshole, but that was not the legal rationale given for that impeachment, nor was it ever brought up in the impeachment proceedings. So to characterize it as such is just factually inaccurate.
Also, the obstructing justice as well. The obstructing of justices or of justice and blocking witnesses stuff as well. Just wanted to add that.
Exactly. Thank you, Denims. Yes, that is 100% correct. Oh, no, I'm not done. I'm sorry. You gave your diatribe, so give people a break. So another thing that's important to consider as well when we talk about the border is that it is in fact completely legal for people to seek asylum. It is entirely legal for people to come here and go through that entire process. That is in fact what is happening with the vast majority of Haitian migrants that are coming to the border. So this notion that, oh, they're like these illegal, whatever. No, they're going through a legal process. And what actually is the reason that Biden is getting heat from both sides of the aisle right now is that even a lot of lefties really disagree with the way he has been handling it, which I would think would appease so many right-wing people, because I thought you guys loved shipping brown people off to back where they came from. I thought that was like your whole thing. So, I mean, there's just no pleasing you, is there?
Stop being racist.
That's
we're all
a little
labeled
far
racist
out there.
now.
That's
Now,
a
are
little
we
far
still
out
on
there,
the
Maddie.
topic of?
Because-
Are we still on the topic of people saying it's
It's not your
xenophobic?
turn yet.
Actually,
It's not your turn yet.
actually, it is Hunter's turn now. He's next.
Oh,
on the
how's that
list.
happen?
But wait a
it's
second.
Hunter,
Since we're
Dylan.
still on the
Preacher.
subject of Biden and everything else, are we still talking about
Let's talk
the
about
fact
whatever
that it's
point you
not
wanna
racist
make.
to call it the
Wait.
Chinese virus?
Wait, can I
Because-
ask Hunter? Were you paying attention to anything of the last?
No, he
10
wasn't.
minutes?
No, I'm sorry. I had to get up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
He
I
was reading
apologize.
CBS
Okay,
News.
so
Preacher
what I'm
did
gonna
have-
do, wait,
Preacher
what
did
I'm
have his
gonna
hand
do
up.
is I'm gonna throw it to Preacher so you can catch up to the speed where the conversation is. Then we'll bring it back to you.
Okay, fair.
I want to make it clear, A, that I am not anti-migrant. Even the ones coming in illegally, I'm not anti-migrant. My problem with Biden on the border is the humanitarian crisis that he has caused. And if you bother to watch my show, maybe once in a while, you'd know that I went over the stats of women who are being raped and murdered, young girls along the way, the crisis that has created. Now, listen, you can say, oh, Biden's doing a great job. That's like me coming in and taking a crap on your living room floor and then patting me on the back because I cleaned it up. That's moronic. This crisis was going on long before the Haitians. The crisis was so bad, even the Guatemalan president said the day after Biden was inaugurated, the coyotes were here telling the people, okay, it's time to go. Let's go. The time is now. He has been doing catch and release in this country when they come to the border, and again, I'm not against them. I understand a lot of them are fleeing because of the drug cartels. The Mexican cartels are horrible with what they're doing. But it's not just Mexicans. It's not just El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. There's 147 different countries they're coming from, and they're paying. There's people in Africa selling their family farms so that they can send somebody here to go up through South and Central America into this country. It is all created because Biden, even Barack Obama has come out and condemned Joe Biden's border policy, saying it has to stop. Come on, man. Oh, he did one good thing because there was national attention. Now,
Oh man, he likes Rocky Road ice cream, man.
Oh, well, yeah, he does. Double chocolate or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm a fat guy. I should know that label, but I don't. I'm sorry. Anti-fat guyism here, right here. I'm sorry. But anyway, do I think he should be impeached over it? It's not impeachable. Do I think he should be impeached over Afghanistan? I don't think that's impeachable. If you're going by the law, the problem is, like Zach said, that the Democrats during Trump's presidency, they made impeachment this political tool. Now, does that mean it should be now? Absolutely not. I am not Republican, by the way. I'm independent. I am a conservative. And I say if the Republicans are being asshats just like the Democrats were, well, then they're just asshats. And neither one of them should be doing it. Impeachment should be the last thing being used. They could have censured Trump, but they didn't. They went straight for impeachment. Do I think that means Joe should be? No, absolutely not. I don't think, well, good for the goose, good for the gander. No, we're not children. Let's not play that game with our politicians. It's retarded. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. It's ridiculous is what I meant to say.
Okay, Hunter, have you caught up to speed?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm willing to let the next guy talk though.
Okay, that would be I guess that's more perfect union.
Yeah, just a quick question for Maddie. What are the legal paths for claiming asylum in the United
The
States?
legal paths for claiming asylum.
The
Well,
order of things that have to happen to claim asylum.
I can answer that for you if you want.
Stop.
yeah, I would love
I
to
want
throw it
Curtis.
to Loner Box. Well, I don't care what you want. Loner Box, go for it.
Yeah, so there's a common confusion here. Like, okay, so technically, if you cross someone's border, like when you're not invited or like, you no visa or whatever, that is illegal. But the UN legislation, which was drafted in part by the US, says, I've got it in front of me, the contracting states shall not impose penalties on account of their legal entry or presence on refugees coming from a territory where their life or freedom was threatened in the sense of Article 1. And then, so if they meet if they're coming to claim asylum, that's why they don't get prosecuted, is because they're not supposed to. They're supposed to claim asylum. If they succeed, they get in. If they don't, they get deported. So I
Okay.
don't know. You can disagree with that morally, but like I don't know why conservatives have to keep on making these like strong like legal claims when the law is actually not on your side about this. Like
You
even
provided an answer. I don't need your diatribe. Let me ask you a
no
follow-up.
diatribes from okay. Okay,
Follow
sorry.
up.
Yeah, go on.
In the United States, U.S. immigration law says that part of the way that asylum works is that you apply in the country in which you exist. You go to the consulate, U.S. consulate or embassy, and you apply there, or you apply in the case where you are subject to literal persecution, okay, or threat of death for political reasons or whatever. You seek asylum in the first safe country. What is the first safe country between the United States and any of these countries that are coming
I'm
through?
glad you mentioned that because again, the safe country is again that would be a violation of international law because international laws are that you don't have to pass through the first.
Right?
You can pass through the
Do,
first safe
do you
country.
think? Do you think that you
Also
do you
define safe.
wait a second? Hang on a second, Maddie. Do you think the United States has subsumed itself away to to international law?
No, that's why when I make legal claims, I only make claims that I can back morally. So the point about forcing
legal
people to
claims have
stay,
to be backed
so the
legally.
problem I would have with forcing people to stay in the first safe country is that you're
Agree
just posing,
legal
and
claims that don't have the force of law
I'm
are
not,
not legal.
I'm
Do
not.
you
That's why
do
I'm
you
saying
believe
we're
that
making, we're
anybody should
talking
be allowed
about.
to come in?
So you're making a moral argument to underpin or support a legal view. In
Yeah,
the
because
United
that's all
States,
laws are
in the
for.
United States, asylum law says you apply through an embassy or a consulate, or you apply through the first safe country, third party
Yeah,
country. You
and
don't just
again,
directly come to the United States. If you live in South America, you don't just come to the United States and apply for asylum. You have to apply in the first safe country. So if, for example, I'm not making an aspersion against any particular country, but say Colombia is a shithole and they're having a problem, then you would come up to the next country rather than go through Mexico. Would you not
well,
agree that
no,
if that's what
that's
the law says, that that's what should be applied?
no,
Are
that's
you
why we
saying
would
that
have the
because you
discussion
have a
because
moral,
like.
wait a second, are you saying because you have a moral difference of opinion that United States law can be subsumed away for your morality?
Well, that's the point, and like people who smoke marijuana do it even though it's illegal. Like the point about we're trying to
Point about
argue a
it.
position here. So
Wait.
what we're
Wait. Okay, let's. You ask him a question.
It's a straw man argument.
so you're asking.
Wait. If you ask somebody a question, I want to make sure that people have the ability to answer said question, right?
Okay, fair
Would you?
enough.
No. See, I cut you off. That's not very nice. You were trying to respond to me, right? Anyway, Loner Bucks, your turn.
So you're asking me to defend a position, right? Like, and the position is that, and this is what was given by the UN, which I think is quite sensible, is if you start imposing this idea that you have to stay in the first safe country, then all you're doing is putting a very arbitrary burden on whatever country happens to be next door to the failed state. So, and this is completely impractical. Like, if a fucking, if a civil war breaks out in Scotland, I'm sorry, but I'm not fucking living in England. Like, I'm gonna go to France or some shit. Like, this is like practical. So that's the point. Is that again? That's why we've got international like laws to say that to advise states not to impose penalties on account of their illegal entry, which means that they're suggesting the country's laws will obviously make it illegal. They're referring to national law and they're suggesting that this is not a practical or moral way to deal with refugees.
Can I get exactly what UN resolution you are referring to as an international law?
I will paste it to you. It's Article 31 of the UN Convention on Refugees.
At what point do you think be turned away from the U.S. border? Is your prerogative that you don't want to turn anybody away?
They should be allowed to claim asylum, and if then they get vetted. They have their claim heard. It's vetted. If they fail, bye, whatever. And if they succeed, Happy Meal. I don't. Yeah, it's quite straightforward.
I was just trying to get
this has been the case for a
I
while.
didn't know if I didn't know because you had a particular view that you were just trying to find a way to tie the loose end, of what you believed with it.
So we're gonna wrap this topic up. I'm happy that we all had a lovely debate about immigration. Don't know how that super was about impeachment, but we're gonna wrap it up. Everybody can make their final points on impeachment. The thing where a president is removed from office. That topic, impeachment. So we're going to start in the top left-hand corner with Brant.
I mean, it's a colossal failure at the border, but I don't think that is the legal means that they have to go after him if they wanted to impeach him. I've always said that I think the 25th Amendment is where they'll get Joe Biden. There's countless other things we didn't even talk about that could be reasons to impeach the guy. A lot of them economically based. But yeah, I mean, plain and simple, yeah, I think he should be impeached. And I think it should be done because he's not physically fit. I don't think the guy's physically fit. I don't think he knows where the hell he is half of the time. I feel like the weekend at Bernie's, they're just like, there's like Jim Henson's got an animatronic puppet. I don't know. That's my final 2 cents.
Denims.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's like an echo. Okay, sorry. I think if the reasoning was more valid, I would obviously be on board with the impeachment. But it seems like there's mostly nothing burgers that people have come up with in terms of the impeachment. Unlike the one that I feel like for Trump was pretty, direct, like, hey, obstruction of justice is pretty bad and we don't want presidents doing that. But it feels like the article was talking just about people feeling like that he wasn't fulfilling his duties as president well enough, which doesn't feel like a good enough reason. And also, yeah, I'm excited for the next topic.
Okay, next is going to be Hunter.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we didn't really have too much of a productive discussion about the impeachment, but that's okay. Overwhelmingly, Biden's presidency thus far has been really good. The best thing that I like to point to is the fact that because of President Biden's child tax credit, we're seeing significant decreases in childhood hunger. I think that's always one that we can kind of all unify and being like, hey, love the guy, hate the guy. This is something good that the dude has done. As far as the impeachment thing goes, yeah, it's a conservative wet dream. They're going to keep on grasping at whatever they can. He's unfit for office. I mean, okay, cool. Tell yourself that, I guess, tell yourself a story before bed. That's just bullshit. At the end of the day, we're seeing a decent presidency from President Biden. And yeah, the main reasons thus far given to impeach him have been just scattered messes.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Sprout.
Okay. Yeah. Biden should be impeached. It's become a political process based off precedent, based off 2 times of precedent. It's been a political process. Biden should more than be impeached because of his withdrawal from Afghanistan. He decided not to listen to the advice from his generals, let alone his Secretary of Defense. So if he decides not to follow his generals or Secretary of Defense's advice, then he gets to take the full blunt of whatever happens afterwards. If it's great, then he gets to experience a great time and say that I did listen to my Secretary of Defense or generals because I know what's best for the country. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. We lost 13 service members in that time frame. We've also left Americans behind. So yes, Biden should be impeached, and Biden should be impeached now.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Loner.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess so far it looks like a lot of these claims are kind of spurious and are just more a kind of vehicle for people to talk about the handful of problems they have with Biden, which is fine. It spurs a discussion that can take different directions. He'll probably get impeached anyway, won't he? If the Republicans get the House in 2022, then they'll go ahead with something, I imagine, if it's, because of the precedent. I think maybe actually it's funny because when I was quiet for a minute, I was reading a bit about this, and there might be one thing you could impeach him for, because apparently Sprouticus, he's also come under fire from European politicians lately because he's still kept the travel ban up to European countries, even though they're being lifted pretty much everywhere else. So maybe we could just impeach him for xenophobia, according to Joe Biden.
Okay, next is going to be Maddie.
So, nope, Joe Biden should not be impeached. There is no actual legal basis that would support or warrant any form of impeachment proceedings against the current president. I know the other side is just a little sad that their guy was impeached twice. That's a rough go. I might be a little salty about it too. The shoe were on the other foot. But fact is that, you know, you're going to have to wait till he commits a high crime or misdemeanor in order to do that. So good luck. Just keep your eyes peeled for it, and I bet you'll find an excuse to do that. And the Republicans will not be taking the House or the Senate in 2022 over my dead body. Thank you.
In your dreams.
You come to the
So
one vote.
Throwing it over to Preacher.
Yeah, anything I spoke about wasn't to say Biden deserves or should be impeached. I just wanted, I think I agree with Loner Bucks on that. I was just taking it as an opportunity to throw my shots out about Biden being probably going to be the worst president to go down in the history of the United States. However, being the worst president isn't really impeachable. I don't think he should be impeached. I don't want to see him impeached. If they push for impeachment, I will do everything I can to fight against it, simply because I don't want Kamala Harris as a president. I think she is way too radical. I think her experience alone is not there, and it would be a horrible, horrible move. And there's no legal precedence for impeachment. We can't go off emotions and feelings for impeachment. We got to go off of the law, and so far he has not. I do believe what Brandt is saying and what MPU has said is that the 25th would be the way they actually do it. Hopefully they don't do that either, because either way we end up with a President Harris, and I believe that would be the plane hitting the ground. So that's it.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to More Perfect Union.
Take your time for it. Look, I said it in my opening. There's nothing currently that requires that the Senate, the Congress and the Senate act to impeach the guy. I think he is incompetent. I think, as Robert Gates said, he's on the wrong side of every foreign policy decision for the last 40 plus years. That's fine, right? There is no provision. There's no provision within the impeachment thing, high crimes, misdemeanors, or stupid, idiotic activity or incompetence in office. That's not impeachable, right? And unless some evidence that comes forward that shows that there was a corrupt intent with his immigration policy or the way he did Afghanistan or something like that, or whatever, right? Unless you show some corrupt intent, it's just incompetent. And to be honest, you can't impeach a guy for being mentally incapable or medically incapable of being able to discharge the duties of office, right? That's why the 25th Amendment exists. So I think the practical reality is, and I agree with the lefties on the panel, we need to get beyond, and with Preacher as well, we need to get beyond the concept of trying to use impeachment as a mechanism, as a political tool to try to exact revenge for losing a fucking election. Biden is a horrible president, but so was Obama. And so was Jimmy fucking Carter.
Hear, hear.
Okay? But we didn't impeach those idiots. We just simply learned from it and we moved forward. And frankly, the whole concept of, unless you can tie an actual honest to God malfeasance of office claim to the president, idiocy and stupidity of operation are not claims. And I rest my case.
Okay, now we're going to go on to the next topic, which I will say, please, let's talk about the Iron Dome and the funding that has been allocated for it. That means not immigration. So, Iron Dome funding. The United States Congress disapproved a very decently sized chunk of change to be passed over for the military defense of Israel through funding for the Iron Dome missile defense system. This has been a little high profile since AOC abstained herself from the vote, and 8 Democrats and 1 Republican voted against it, but the entirety of the rest of Congress voted in favor. So, my question simply is, should the United States be sending funds to the Iron Dome? We're going to start in the top left-hand corner with Brandt.
Yeah. I mean, we understand the threats that Israel deals with, and while I don't agree with a lot of Israel's government and decisions. I still think that they have a lot of existential threats that are posed to them, and if used accordingly and appropriately, the Iron Dome has proven very effective, has a good track record versus Hamas influence, just the conflict that's going on over there. And, if we can do what we can to help protect our neighbor in Israel, then I think that we should do it. I'm a pro-Israel person. I am part Jewish. And so, yeah, I support it. I support the Iron Dome, but I will put the clause in that I am a bit biased. So,
Okay, we're gonna throw it over now to Denims, the video essayist.
Yeah, that's me. Is this specific? This is just about funding the Air Dome. This is not about AOC. Just want to make sure.
Well, she did abstain from it, so if you want to make it partially about that, you can. But this is
Okay,
about
I'm just
Iron
gonna
Dome funding.
hold. Okay, just
That's
now.
your voting
I think that there isn't anything inherently bad about the Iron Dome funding, considering that it is just a defense mechanism for the country. The problem is that funding the Iron Dome gives the the country of Israel more funds to use offensively. So they can use their own funds or other funds offensively that otherwise would have been put towards the Iron Dome. And that's potentially problematic considering the way that the people on the Gaza Strip have been treated.
Okay, next is going to be Hunter Avallone.
Yeah, honestly, I pretty much agree with what the last two people said as well. With the way things are right now, I think that there's a great conversation to be had about some of the bad things that Israel has done. I'm not a big fan of Israel myself, but with the way things are right now, yeah, I think that Israel deserves to have the ability to protect itself. And I understand also a little bit what Denims means, that it might even kind of it'll give Israel the ability to be more aggressive in other aspects. But the problem is that that's going to happen so long as America's giving money to Israel. That's not intrinsic with the Iron Dome. So we could talk about the like underlying stuff with Israel. Do we want to fund it, whatnot? But when it comes to the actual defense mechanism, it's been shown to prevent 85% of the missiles that have been shot at Israel. I think that them having the ability to defend themselves, it really does make sense.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Sprouticus.
Okay, I think that we should support Israel. I think we should support Israel with the Iron Dome funding. I think the Iron Dome is a completely defensive weapon. It saves people from Israel from being attacked by their surrounding enemies. So, of course, I think that Israel, as one of our greatest allies in the Middle East, should receive funding and defensive funding from us to continue keeping up the Iron Dome. That way, Israel can defend themselves. There's no way possible that the Iron Dome can be considered an offensive weapon. And so, yes, I think that completely and 100% the United States should help fund the Iron Dome.
Okay. Loner Box.
Yeah, I get a bit frustrated at the kind of, especially the response to AOC saying that we should stop, the Iron Dome funding should be stopped, as if what's that going to do? Just it would make it a slightly more fair fight and there's more people dying and okay, whatever. But yeah, I think the language of just the whole Iron Dome being just defensive for reasons Denim said, it's you could get around that, and also just the idea that the fact that they have that defense just makes it easier for them to do what they've always done, which is just to exercise their force with total impunity in the region. And it's not really surprising because American presidents, whether it was Trump recognizing Jerusalem or then Obama refusing to veto on the expansion of settlements in the UN. So yeah, but I feel like these things need to be addressed with a much broader network of policies. I don't think getting rid of the Iron Dome is going to fix anything.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Maddie.
Oh boy, so I might be the one dissenting vote here, person here. So here we go. Had I been able to cast a vote on the additional $1 billion in funding for the Iron Dome, I would have voted no. And here are my reasons why, and we can get into a more detailed discussion of them after everyone gives their opening statement. So even before the vote, the US had already provided billions of dollars in military financing to Israel, and more funding was guaranteed for years to come. This $1 billion was in addition to the $3.5 billion we send them annually. Second point is that there was no urgent need for these funds, which could have been invested in peaceful alternatives instead of further militarization. That money was placed into a slush fund that Israel has the opportunity to use up until 2024. So the fact that it was rushed through in the manner that it was, without much discussion or debate on the floor of Congress, makes me question why that is. And I think that was something that AOC had specifically called out in her response as to why she was so conflicted with casting her vote. And then finally, the Iron Dome saves lives. That's true. And saving any life is an infinitely noble goal and something that we absolutely should support. But this conflict has two peoples trapped in it. And there are simply no similar efforts to save Palestinian lives and deter fatalities against them. And that, I think, is also why I struggle with the amount of financing and military aid that the United States provides to Israel, even when it's something like the Iron Dome, which is a purely defensive system. But there's no comparative defensive system on the Palestinian side. So I would like to see if the United States could potentially explore financing alternative solutions that seek to reduce the amount of violence on both sides and reduce the loss of life both on the Israeli and the Palestinian side. And that's my position.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Preacher.
Yeah, I am pro-Israel and pro-Iron Dome, and the reason I am supportive of this is very simple. I understand the thought that if they have that dome, then it's money, they could put more money towards being offensive instead of defensive. But the reality is, having that dome is what keeps them from being so offensive because, like they said, Hunter was right, 85% of the rockets are stopped. If the dome wasn't up and one of those rockets were to hit a school or a hospital, let's say, the amount of people injured, Israel would be forced to. Right now, with the Iron Dome up, they're deflecting these rockets, and they can go for soft targets to find the Hamas people who are launching them. If the Iron Dome is not there and those rockets make it through and hit a school or a hospital, they're going for where the rockets are coming from. And unfortunately, Hamas is using residential areas, residential buildings, and hospitals to fire these rockets from, therefore putting more Palestinians in jeopardy. And it's not just protecting the Jewish people of Israel. Israel is actually very mixed culture. It has the Jewish people, it has Christians, it has Arabs. There's a lot of people being protected by this dome. And true, Palestinians could use some protection. And I think the best thing, they don't even want Hamas controlling them the way Hamas does. The only reason they don't rise up against it is because they feel safer at least having someone there. But I think if Hamas was allowed the Palestinians to have their government back, then probably the U.S. would work with them. I do feel for the Palestinian people. I'm not against Palestinian people. I am against Hamas. And that's a huge difference. I do feel for the Palestinian people. And right now, with the Iron Dome in place, the rockets aren't getting through like Hamas would intend them to, and Palestinians are being saved also because of that.
Okay, throw it over to More Perfect Union.
Well, basically, right. Israel is a significant ally in the U.S. for the U.S. in the Middle East. Whatever the tensions are, they are actually the most stable player in an unstable region. We fund Iron Dome munitions systems deployment. It's a defensive tool, right? And Maddie's point about, well, it just frees up resources for offensive activity. There are no cases where the Israeli military offensively instigates contact with Palestinians, right? It's always in response to. So it's kind of a specious argument to say that, right? The fact that when rockets are launched from Gaza or from the West Bank or from Lebanon, and these systems are deployed and they shoot these missiles down, the fact that Israel is knocking them down to the extent that they knock them down, which is about an 85% rate, and prevent civilian deaths on the Israeli side, that actually restrains the government response to go after them offensively. If we remember, look back at the Intifada 2, we see what happens when there was a more intensive offensive ground war, right? So when these rockets are getting launched or getting knocked out of the skies, it's a problem. It indicates that there's problems on both sides, and both sides should work to try to find a peaceful solution. But deployment of resources to shoot down weapons that are designed to kill civilians cannot be seen as a bad thing. And I find it hard to believe that no matter what you think, no matter how bad you want to prop up the terrorist organizations that are driving the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Hamas and Hezbollah, right? And the fact that those are really just third-party entities for Iran, it's okay that you want to believe that, but don't think for a second that anybody providing the funding on the other side actually gives a crap about protecting lives. They're sacrificing lives. They're convincing people to blow themselves up, to commit homicide in the name of an ideology. And the fact that we funded the Israelis to be able to withstand that kind of an attack without having to offensively go into combat, I think that that's a good thing. And the fungibility of like munitions and how, we spend something here, there, or whatever, and that prevents people from doing something else. I think that's a specious argument to make. So I think it's fine that we support them, and I think we need to continue to support them while simultaneously trying to find some reasonable two-state solution for both of the parties.
Okay, the conversation is open to the room. Again, I ask you guys to be somewhat cordial.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I support funding the Iron Dome. I don't know what else is allotted in the bill, nor what is the battle plan of what Israel's defense forces are going to do. But I would want to see the dome be used. I as a libertarian, I just want to see funds be used the correct way in all aspects, especially when we're talking about military industrial complex. We're talking about the possibility of laundering millions of dollars in the name of a false front of this patty cake game between two sides. But I mean, when it comes to just funding the Iron Dome, in theory, and its proven track record, I see absolutely nothing wrong with a country reaching out to an established partner and getting funding.
I'm somewhat behind you there, Brant. I think that it's obvious the Iron Dome is a completely defensive weapon. It is not an offensive weapon whatsoever. It's 100% defensive. It can't be used for offensive maneuvers. Just the way the Iron Dome is created, it cannot be used offensively. And so I think backing a defensive weapon in a battle such as like this with Israel and Palestine, I think that it is 100% okay for the United States to send funding to our greatest ally in the Middle East for a defensive weapon to protect themselves in a battle.
Yeah, and
I believe the bill was standalone. I could be wrong, but I believe it was standalone. And I look at it also, and looking at numbers, and 1 billion does sound like a lot of money, especially to me. I'm only a thousandaire, sorry. But when I look at it, and I look at if Israel were to actually go to true war with Palestine, because let's say they don't have the dome up and a missile gets through and now it's a war, I do believe Iran would join in. I believe United States would eventually be sucked into that. And when I look at it, $1 billion right now, and limited amount of deaths, obviously not zero deaths, but limited compared to what we just had in Afghanistan over 20 years, $8 trillion being spent. And I think it was like a total, like between both sides, everything, 900,000 dead. I think the $1 billion is well worth the protection and avoidance of that.
Yeah. You
The
know,
only
never know-
dissenter
For you as
left.
you
as a
never know where
libertarian-
leadership will take things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Brant, as a libertarian, I just wanted to ask if you what you think about Israel's expansion of settlements into the West Bank and Gaza.
Not the question. Stay on topic.
I think
mean,
it's
okay,
no,
well,
wait.
actually-
To be clear,
No, come on.
Wait,
If we're gonna have a debate,
wait.
let's stay on the actual topic.
well, it is on topic. It is.
What was-
Wait,
I'm
wait,
not a
wait,
question.
wait. Okay, let me ask you a question. Where are the settlements located between the Israel-Palestine conflict? What are the missiles going to be defending from? Missiles sent from the Gaza Strip, in part due
Twisted
to
logic.
settlement. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let's say that I was going to give guns and bombs to Russia. Do you think bringing up Russian airstrikes in, say, Syria or the government's policies against anything else would at all be important?
Is there anything
when
in
bringing
this
up funding?
Okay, Dylan, is there anything in this conversation that says they're creating new settlements and moving Iron
Okay.
Dome into the settlements?
So this is what we're gonna do. If you don't want to talk, you don't have to. Loner, continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask because I think someone, I can't remember whether, I think it might have been you, Preacher, you were saying that we could even say that the Iron Dome makes Israel less aggressive because they're not going to get bombed as much, no civilian casualties, no jerk responses. But then, you can go the other way around and saying the fact that they have this Iron Dome makes it much easier for them to exercise their power in the region to expand settlements, which pretty much everyone has described as a violation of international law, given the lack of space for Palestinians to live in. I think that's quite relevant. That it's unfortunately Israel is not just stuck surrounded by a bunch of rabid countries for no reason. It's kind of partly because they've spent the last 50, 60, 70 years expanding, displacing people, nearly 500,000 now. We can even go into the funding of Hamas if you want, but these things are quite connected. That's why I don't like talking about the Iron Dome in isolation.
You know what I do? Listen. I will not say Israel is 100% innocent. I will not say that they
Yeah.
are doing things perfectly. I won't go that far. I'm just speaking in specifics of the Iron Dome. I know Israel has blood on their hands. I'm not going to deny that. However, I'm talking about avoiding more blood. And if there's something that a hearing could be done on, I know what you're talking about, taking over the apartments and the housing buildings that they believe are theirs, and Palestinians say no, they're ours. I mean, that's a whole other. I don't even know where to go with that, to be honest with you. But no, Israel's not innocent in anything. I'm not saying they're 100% innocent. I'm not saying they're perfect. I do stand behind Israel as a Christian. I mean, believe Judaism is the history to Christianity, but even the United States isn't perfect. No, there's no perfect country. There's no perfect military. I do not believe. I'm just talking about the Iron Dome in the sense of what it actually provides and what it actually has the potential to prevent.
Okay, I can accept that not every country is perfect. All right, that's why I was just asking because I was specifically directed to Brant as a libertarian.
Oh, I'm
just what-
sorry.
Yeah. No,
what they thought
your
about
I think your exact
settlement.
question was basically, how do I feel about them occupying new area and then reinforcing said area with the Iron Dome? When it comes to diagnosing this, there's two ways you can go about it. You can keep it completely objective, saying it's wrong if you're taking something that isn't yours, and then you're receiving either foreign aid or money from foreign aid to strengthen and bolster your defenses. That would be wrong. But then I would look at it anecdotally and say, subjectively, that as a libertarian, I do try to tend to be more isolationist. So I would say the easy cop out would be for me to just say it's none of my business. I don't really care. But I mean, subjectively, yeah, it's kind of fucked up that what the IDF is doing. But like I said, I don't necessarily agree with everything that they're doing, but I do agree with approving a better defense system, essentially. And I mean, I'm still always going to back Israel. But do I back what their governments does? I'm skeptical of all governments.
Anything
pretty fucked up.
about making it conditional? I don't know. I'm just trying to float some ideas out here. But
I
if
think
you're against them throwing people off their land and using them to expand and build houses and things like that, then
The problem is that we've tried exactly that. The problem is we've tried tying a lot of funding to our peace initiatives and other proposed policies within Israel, and thus far it just simply it's been ineffectual in leveraging any genuine cooperation.
I
from
mean, we tried it.
the Israeli government.
We tried what Matty Cakes is talking about exactly in Afghanistan. The only part of that deal that Afghanistan held up on is that they wouldn't attack us or our allies. That is literally the only part of the deal they held up on. They were supposed to go against. They were supposed to like decrease their support or their ties with Al Qaeda. Didn't happen. There's a whole bunch of stuff that even the generals that testimony said didn't happen. The only thing they kept up on was that they wouldn't attack us or our allies. So making things conditional and then actually being able to follow through with that on support seems to be a downside of the United States, to where we can't make things conditional and actually follow through in those conditions.
Okay.
So wait, I just have a quick.
Okay,
sorry.
You can finish up. Then we're gonna go to More Perfect Union.
Great. I just had sort of a question then, and this could be to the entire panel. Is the argument that if the U.S. were to decide not to give the amount of aid that we have been giving to Israel, is the argument that that would render Israel unable to defend themselves? Is that the argument?
Well, that's kind of like the how rather than the what actually happens that we did it.
Yeah, but
Regardless
I'm
of
asking,
whether
like, if
think-
we
yeah.
if we halved the amount of, and this is purely in like financing, so we can just like have it a bit more focused, right? So in the amount of financing that the United States provides to Israel, are we saying that if we halved what we are currently doing, is the argument that that would mean they are unable to properly defend themselves?
It could mean that. It could very well mean that.
I think
I
if you're
haven't
looking
seen-
at a
Why is that?
hypothetical,
Why
I-
is
I
that?
haven't.
I
I
think
haven't
if you're looking
seen
at a
Israel's budget.
hypothetical,
Pandemic.
one of
I don't know.
one of the issues would be that, again, taking the Palestinian people out of it, looking
After
at
Preacher,
Hamas
though, where
who
you
is
have to
being
do
funded.
More
Yeah, I'm
Perfect Union.
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Being funded by Iran, then you have Israel looking down the barrel at Iran too. So, I mean, it's a hypothetical, so I can't say yes or no if that's what would happen, but that's a potential. Go ahead, MP. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So
I have
about
not
the fact
seen.
that, like, oh yeah, sorry, Spartacus, go for it.
I have not seen Israel's budget, so I can't really say either way whether or not Israel would be able to defend itself with the Iron Dome, be able to keep the Iron Dome up with its own money. So I wouldn't be able to say either way. I think we'd have to actually have a deep in look on how Israel spends its money prior to us saying that.
Okay, because I'm saying, I guess I wanted to point out what I think is a pretty interesting statistic. It turns out that Israel is the 8th largest exporter of arms in the world, and they actually have a thriving economy that has only expanded over the last 10-15 years. In fact, they have a GDP of nearly $400 billion. And their own former Minister of Justice and a former ambassador to Israel under President Bush both articulated that they don't need and shouldn't be receiving generous amounts of U.S. aid, that other countries probably need more desperately. So considering that, like, a former minister of Israel is articulating that, the fact that they have a thriving economy and that they themselves produce arms and export them, I'm just curious as to why they would not be able to defend themselves should the United States not
Well,
even
that's-
just end aid, but like significantly reduce it.
It's
Loner?
just ask-
clear.
as a hypothetical.
Wait. More Perfect
Yeah,
Union.
MPU.
He's been
Sorry.
waiting. Yeah. Write Loner down.
You're muted, MPU.
You're muted. I don't think you're muted by me. You're muted yourself. MPU?
MPU, you're muted. Hi
I'm
there,
so
fella.
used to being muted by Dylan. I just simply forgot to.
Right, sprout down.
You thought you were under punishment.
Yeah. What else is a conservative? Okay. So the argument, right, to say that the government of Israel can self-sustain, so they don't need assets from anybody else, because they could simply just not sell arms to somebody else. They could their military industrial complex or their industrial organization doesn't require them to build or maintain a relationship with somebody who could back them up in the event that they get attacked by overwhelming force. You realize that since 1948, right, the Israelis have been completely surrounded on three sides, except for the Mediterranean, right? Three sides by countries and ideologies that want to shove them off into the Mediterranean, wipe them off the face of the earth. You realize that Muslims built one of their third holiest shrine on the remains of the Jewish temple. If you don't think that Israel thinks and operates under the guise that they are under existential threat every single day of your life, you have a problem with your ideology.
Mhm.
The fact that the
Can I
United
respond?
States, you can in a minute.
Let him finish.
Oh God. Okay. Wake me up in 10 years.
Wrecked.
Okay, go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead and spew your little fucking.
I will. I will.
rat-
I'll say my little piece. I'll spew my little piece.
Yeah, fuck your
This is
piece.
great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is so
I
good.
know. Okay.
Hug it out.
So I
I
guess
get
like
that. Hang on a second.
I got a well.
Not
I'm,
here.
oh,
CTV's
so
not
can
here.
I or can't I respond? I'm very confused.
I sit back and I say my piece. I get bitched at for saying my piece, and then when I try to talk, you get to fucking roll your bullshit. Your argument is fucking
Oh my
retarded,
God.
stupid.
Well, okay, can we not? Oh, thank you.
I apologize for the term, but your argument is specious. It's stupid. Okay.
Whatever happened to civility? Come on.
You disrespect somebody
Right.
else trying to bring forth an actual argument after I've
Oh my
shut
God.
the fuck up and tried to listen to this bullshit that you are saying. And you roll your eyes like
Brevity.
somehow your argument fucking matters. Your argument is stupid.
Brevity. Practice it. So
Practice fucking
I guess
intelligence.
one thing I will do my best. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is this existential threat and the notion that they face this like daunting existential threat every single day. So I agree. Like there are a lot of nefarious actors within that region, especially those that have Israel within their sights. But the geopolitical situation has evolved dramatically over the last few decades. And a big reason for this is the newfound economic power that Israel has. In fact, they specifically will do arms deals now with people that otherwise maybe 20 years ago or so were seen as their ideological foe and people who they had these massive conflicts with. The fact that they now do a decent amount of business and commerce with countries like the United Arab Emirates, with countries like Jordan, like obviously it's not as open as maybe people would like it to be, but it's because of that now existing economic relationship that keeps a lot of those what would otherwise be nefarious actors in the region more in line with treating Israel as a partner in certain things rather than simply as an adversary. So, I mean, we could talk about like ways to negate an existential threat from places like Iran, because they are one of the biggest providers of rockets and arms to Hamas. Same thing with Syria. It's like, well, how do we reduce the amount of arms that are coming into the country from those two powers? But like, if we want to talk existential threat, that situation has largely evolved. So I don't know. I think this whole like doomsday scenario would make a great movie, but it's just not grounded in reality anymore.
Okay, MPU, do you want to? I'm just gonna give the mic to you if you want it.
Yeah, I'm going to apologize for use of the term. And Maddie, I don't think that you're stupid. I think you are intelligent, right? But your argument sort of presupposes, right, that the Israelis simply need to stop thinking about defending themselves while we sit back and work everything through other means. The people that are launching rockets don't even care about their own people. They're just simply trying to score political points. Okay. So I don't personally care about the fungibility of money. If we're giving the Israelis money to put missiles in their Iron Dome launchers so that they can attack missiles that are inbound by the other side. Hold on, am I muted? No, I'm not muted. So if they can attack missiles that are coming inbound from their enemies, then I'm fine with that. And if you want to argue, and if people want to have a discussion about the legitimacy of questioning the fungibility of the money that's going to other purposes, that's freeing up, that the money that we give missiles, right, for Iron Dome is freeing up for other purposes, that's a fair conversation. Okay. But that's not the principal argument that we're having here, which is whether or not the United States should be funding Iron Dome at the Israelis' request. We're saving lives. And everybody in this panel ought to be for saving lives, right? The Iron Dome isn't used to kill Palestinians. It's used to prevent Israeli citizens from dying. And I find it incredulous that anybody would argue against that concept.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the list, and the list is Loner, Sprout, then Preacher. So I'm gonna start with Loner.
Yeah, it was funny we were mentioning Spew and then talking about like ideologies that want to kill like people in Israel from the 1940s. I didn't know that like radical Islam was like the defining force in the Middle East in the 1940s. Like, no, that happened a little bit later. I mean, this wasn't like Yasser Arafat. I mean, we can go into the history again. I'll mention it again. In the 1980s, when the Israeli governor of the Gaza Strip was giving money to Islamist movements, that one of which eventually became Hamas. Because divide and conquer, because it's much easier to exert apartheid rule and neocolonialism over a country that is like doesn't have much favor on the national stage. I can hear you grumbling under me in the background, but like, can you wait, please? Just in the name of like good old fashioned. Let
us be true. It is not
absolutely. It absolutely is apartheid. It is a constant violation of human rights, of just like a very long network of humiliations and degradation. And again, like that's why people keep dodging or just like downplaying the question of the settlements, because that's what it is. It's apartheid. And that's why, like, if like, okay, but no one here likes Hamas. Great. Like, so if you want to, but that's why there's a problem with like talking about the dome as if it's just this like isolated issue. It's not. It's being used to facilitate what the state of Israel is doing to the people of Palestine. You can see the map of the disappearing places. Like, this isn't justified by the fact that like, but so by defensive purposes. I'm still not finished. If you really are concerned about just like,
wait, okay, can we?
The conversation
if you are really, so if you're really concerned about peace and being,
okay, look. The first topic was about Biden impeachment, and it went everywhere, right?
I like immigration,
right? It went there, and it went to deep places. It got to Trump, and it went everywhere, right? This topic, this is staying within the country, right? Like if somebody was asking me, should I give money to a government, talking about the actions of said government, I think is completely in line with said conversation. If somebody asked me, should we give money to the Saudi government, I think I could bring up the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi if he isn't directly related to the war in Yemen.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it might just be hard to digest, but people in the Middle East don't actually become like Islamic fundamentalists and for no reason, or because they were sitting in bed one night and they read that like one line in the book in the Quran that talks about slaughter and shit. No, it's because of a very long network of political and economic interests and motivations, one of which is kind of being facilitated by the existence of the Iron Dome. So if your concern is peace, the fact that you mentioned much earlier, I did hear you, Perfect Union, talking about the Palestinian freedom movement, and you immediately just went on to other Islamicists and they want to put everyone in burqas, etc. But you didn't actually mention one of the two absolutely most common, you did say that, and one of the two of the most common demands of the Free Palestine movement are actually like I don't think anyone would find them controversial. One being the right of return for displaced Palestinians, and the right to self-determination. Like why? But again, it's like
You realize
Muslim
that
bad.
you realize the Israelis offered land for peace, right? Right?
When
They offered. Okay, you obviously do not have a place at this table. If you do not know that, it is factual, and I'm not going to fucking school you on it.
Yeah.
why are we here? We're here to
Is
talk about it.
Israel
We're here to
offered?
talk about it, but if
Is
you don't have any fundamental understanding of what the facts are, then you don't need to be a part of this table.
Are we talking about like back in
Israel?
the 60s?
No. Israel
No.
offered a two-country peace agreement. Palestine disagree with it. But that's besides the point that I was about to say, since I'm next on the list. But what I did want to state is that the Iron Dome is extremely expensive. The Iron Dome costs about $100 to $150,000 per interceptor that's fired out of it, and per battery costs about $50 million. The Iron Dome is not an inexpensive defense system. It's a very expensive defense system in which I feel like we need to help. We need to help Israel if they need help with this system. That we need to help them with funding this system, since they are our greatest ally in the Middle East. We need to look out for our country's interests, and we don't need to look out for other countries' interests. But if it comes against ours, so if it goes against our country's interests, we have no obligation to care about other countries' interests if it goes against ours.
Okay, Sprout,
Amen.
you were
Fuck
next.
Palestine,
Wait,
bro.
question. Sprout, that you were next on the list. Was that your basic statement?
Oh no, I kind of forced my turn, so no, that was my statement.
Okay. Next is going to be Preacher. Denims, do you want to go?
I mean, just I don't know. The rhetoric of just like, okay, America as a world power that is funding this apartheid state should only care about this apartheid state because they're our ally is like one of the most heartless things I've ever heard in my life, considering that like the people who live in Gaza are like real people, and maybe you got lucky with your spawn point in the US, but those people are literally dying to the state of Israel. And like I don't know, dude. There's a certain level of callous that I can't.
Maybe we should go against Hamas then, right? Maybe we should go against Hamas putting rocket launchers on top of hospitals, on top of schools, to where
Maybe we should address
if Israel actually wants to take out the dooming threat that they're experiencing, they have to attack the rocket launchers on top of hospitals and schools and places that civilians go to. Maybe we should take a look at that as to why Israel's attacking these places. They've also
or maybe we could just address the issues on why Hamas. Maybe we can just address the issues of why Hamas came to fruition as we know it. It's not like Hamas has been here since the beginning of time. Like there's a reason people join Hamas. And it's because they feel that that is their last resort, and that there is no one that is there for their interests, and they have no political power. They don't have food and water or resources in their strip, in like the Gaza Strip. All of it is controlled by Israel. Like maybe we could like
rockets.
No. Can
so
I
again I'll ask.
real quick?
Again, I'll ask. Do you know what roof knocking is?
I just wait. It was Preacher's turn next. I want to make sure that he does get to say. Denims, do you want to answer that question?
Let Preacher go, because I feel like this is going to go into a whole sunlock. So
Preacher.
Okay, I'll take it. You don't know what roof knocking is.
I was going to talk about roof knocking. First of all, there is roof knocking, where they fire a missile over that drops a light explosion on top of the building that lets them know, listen, it's time for you to get out of this building because we're going to be bombing it. It gives them plenty of time to evacuate the building. But they do that on buildings that they know the missiles are coming from. Now, as far as the people joining Hamas because of no food, no water, no this, the reason they have no food, no water, no this is because there's one way into the Gaza Strip, and that is controlled by Hamas, who is stealing any supplies that come in and any money that comes in. We can talk about why Hamas has been created. Yes, big error. But we're talking about Hamas of today. They are funded by Iran. They are a proxy fighter for Iran. Now, do I believe that there should be a war going on? No, I don't want to see a war going on. I would love to see a two-state solution. But until there's a two-state solution, there has to be something. And the Iron Dome being a system of defense, stopping those missiles is what's stopping Israel for saying, like, you know what? Screw it. We're steamrolling the whole crap. That's what it is stopping. And when we talk about who it's saving, there are Palestinian people who live in Israel also. There are Arabs in Israel. There are Christians in Israel. It's not just Jewish people being protected
No
by
one's
this
saying that.
dome.
No one is saying
No,
that.
I
am
know,
in
I
favor of a
understand.
two-party state.
No, I know you're not
it's
saying
just a
that.
solution. First of all, with regard to the roof knocking, I don't need to be explained what roof knocking is. Okay, I specifically said I don't want to talk about it because it's going to lead to a stun lock, but I will explain. Personally, I like when someone is about to murder me and then they tell me, hey, by the way, we're going to murder you. Oh, that's not synonymous.
They're not coming to murder you.
Wait, let me finish. Oh, listen, your house is going to get demolished. But we're so nice for telling you, right? We're so nice for telling you that your house is going to get demolished.
When they're launching missiles off the top of it, yes.
Your stuff, sorry, we can't do anything about that. Like the fact that you won't have a home, sorry, we don't.
Then
like
maybe
that
they
is still
shouldn't
like.
let Hamas set up shop on top of their building.
Oh yeah, let's just tell the terrorists. Don't. No.
Oh, so they are terrorists.
You can't enter.
Thank you.
I never said that there weren't terrorists. I never said that. I don't know why
Honestly,
you think this is an own. They're
honestly-
not like Hamas is not like vampires. You can't just be like you cannot enter. If they want to
Right.
enter, they're going
so how
to
is
enter.
that
I am not.
Israel's fault?
But I am saying that
Yeah,
the
you have to
people who
wear
are entering.
garlic.
Well, garlic would help. Yes,
And I'm
but how is that
honestly-
Israel's fault?
Denims, honestly, if
Wait, okay.
I'm
honestly,
sorry, I'm
if-
not trying to be mean here. I swear I'm not trying to be mean.
honestly, Denims, if China was going to attack my house, I would very much appreciate a projectile going into my living room. That way I know, like, oh, I better get out of my house.
Hey, get on
You
Millie's
realize
call
there are
list.
things that are bad, and then there are things that are worse. In the way that someone like punching you is bad, but maybe someone killing you is worse. So them sending rockets and killing people would be really bad, but them sending warning ones is still bad.
Okay.
Like destroying people's homes are still bad.
Okay,
But
stop.
Dad,
Wait,
can I ask
stop.
her a question?
Wait, stop. Okay, we have somebody new here. It is Orange Screen. Orange
Hi,
Screen.
Orange.
Can you introduce
Oh, hello. Yeah, I can introduce myself, but it is a bit strange that it's when it's yellow. There we go. Hello.
That's a lot of light behind you.
That is, yes, you're very
well,
orange.
It's
I
you
live
have
in the
the
I
sun.
live
You're
in the
like on
depths
your
of
way to
hell. What can I
Mars.
say? I apologize.
So-
Hello.
It's a vibe.
So Hunter
That's
Avallone
actually
Hunter
fun.
Avallone heard that TTV is constantly in the Raptors and fled in fear, and so Kat has decided to sub out. So Kat, do you want to wait a little bit before you give your opinion, or should I let it? Because we're gonna move on to the next topic soon anyway.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would assume. And just in case I never do get to say, do get to go, I would say that in the case of if suddenly I was made a U.S. representative, I would have voted no on this. For the sole purpose of, I don't think that you should be providing defensive units to solely one side and essentially saying like, good luck to the other. If we're going to give anybody something to defend themselves, it should be unequivocally given to both ends. So essentially, it's telling one side, yeah, you're going to now officially have all the casualties. Of course, I am there for preserving human life, but I'm not a tactical human life preserver. We're going to save everybody, or then what the fuck are we doing?
Is that how it works
Okay.
in war? You get to save everybody? I mean, that's not how it works in war. Let's be realistic here. We're
Civilians?
talking about a terrorist nation. Even with civilians, we talk about a terrorist. We talk about a terrorist nation and a non-terrorist nation.
Like,
If you don't
Which
have any
nation are
money,
you
like
going to protect?
if
the
you don't have
terrorist
any
nation or the
money, why are you
non-terrorist
buying all
nation?
those rockets? If you don't have any money,
Thank
if
you,
your
Brant.
country doesn't
Where are
have
they
any money-
getting money for the
Okay.
rockets?
Wait, can I just quickly? I'm personally interested. What is the difference between a non-terrorist nation and a terrorist nation?
One is run by
one
Hamas.
state recognizes, maybe officially or unofficially, supporting and sponsoring groups that are
Let's
terrorists.
say
And
Iran.
when you have a terrorist nation,
Pakistan.
the terrorists tend to operate within the confines of the community.
Well, they know the
putting-
state backs them.
but they're putting the innocent civilians at risk, and that's why it's so
Okay.
hard to do what.
So I just have one question, and I know I'm not supposed to get it, but I just have one question. So would you say that the United
This is
States
so
was?
unfair, Dylan.
I know, but would you say the United States is a terrorist nation when it was funding the Contras?
I
Yes.
mean, the who?
The Contras.
Yes.
Contras.
Yes.
Violent
have-
contra affair.
Yeah. We should not have been. Sure. I
No, we
totally.
shouldn't have been. You're right.
Okay, I was just interested. Next is actually your turn.
Wrong is fucking wrong. Wrong is wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
And the point right? No offense, Kat, I love you, right? Okay, but no offense, but your argument really is naive when you say that, well, we if we're going to provide arms to somebody, an ally, we should give them to the person who's not our ally. So we should assume a parity across, right? We should assume a parity across the battlefield. That's not how international relations work. That's not how military alliances work. Okay? And the bottom line is that the vast majority of the negative angst that comes out of the Palestinian Authority is driven by Iran. It comes out of Lebanon, it comes out of Hezbollah, it comes out of Hamas, and it comes out of the old Palestinian Authority under Yasser Arafat. Okay? These people were propped up to believe that they had a mission. They were simply pawns, they were tools of Iran. Okay? And the intent was to try to unite because, to be honest, if nobody thinks that there isn't a purpose behind Iran trying to become a hegemony in the Middle East, they truly want to be a hegemony in the Middle East, right? And they are using everything they can, every wedge issue they can to attack what they perceive as their major threat. Do you think that anybody else, any other country in the Middle East can stand up to Iran besides Israel? And if you can say that there is, I double down, I double dog dare you to prove it.
So on my
That
initial
is something that's a
point,
bit irrelevant to the Iron Dome, though. Like again, it
Yeah,
That's not
doesn't
the Iron Dome isn't the battlefield.
No,
It's
this
purely
is in
defensive,
response
right?
to
To protect
This is in
citizens.
response to Catanera's comment about if we're going to provide munitions to one side, defensive munitions to one side, we need to provide it to the other side. That's
Yeah,
literally
so-
the context.
yeah,
of
I understand, like in the case of which I was talking about, like two groups that are, let's say right now there's the whole situation going on with Taiwan and China, and I'm not saying why aren't we giving defensive things to China as well, because in that case, like they are explicitly like not the side in which we defend. But when it comes to Palestine, at this point it's basically seen by much of the world to it's recognized by a lot of people as already part of Israel, but Israel is only going to be building something that protects a certain part and leaving off a little portion in which they're like, I really hope you do die. So if we're going to go ahead and say Israel is our ally, then why aren't we protecting all of Israel? It's part of our ally, right?
What are we not protecting? We
The
provide
Gaza Strip,
I-
yeah, because like a whole the Gaza has a lot of people. Actually,
Yeah, but the
it's
Gaza
like the
Strip
dense
is not Gaza Strip
population.
is
the
not
Gaza
considered
was
Gaza
ceded
Strip
to
is
the
not considered
Palestinian Authority,
Israel.
right? Under
The
Obama.
United States
Palestinian
100% considers it. They won't recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. Officially, they recognize it as part of Israel.
The U.S. funded Iron Dome
Nice.
does not protect the Gaza Strip, correct?
Which
So-
is why we're
Okay,
asking why
awesome.
not.
So
that's what I'm asking for.
Israel is protecting its own country. So Israel's borders even considers Gaza Strip not to be Israel. So cool. Gaza Strip is not Israel. Gaza Strip is Palestine. Congratulations, we figured that out. And now let's move forward with the conversation about the Iron Dome.
Except
No,
the United
I was
States,
just-
as it stands
I
right
was
now, does not
substantiating
recognize
it.
that.
Yes, I was
Can I say something that we're all missing here?
Preacher,
really-
you are third on the list after Maddie
Okay.
and Grant. So I actually
Yeah.
do at the moment.
Yeah, but when I was in school, I used to cut line all the time.
That's great. Well, right now this ain't school. This is prison.
Oh,
Okay.
shit,
So,
my
Cat,
I was there too.
Cat, wrap
Yeah,
this up, and then we got to throw it to
yeah.
Maddie.
So all I was saying is like I am substantiating on what terms I would have voted no, and my voting no is that if I as the U.S. like to consider all of it Israel, then I should be protecting all of Israel. That's all.
What part of Israel is you're not getting? The Gaza Strip has been ceded to the Palestinian Authority, so it's not technically part of Israel.
If I try to put my address on the U.S. Embassy website, Palestine will not come up. So
Because
I
there's
guess
no
I would have to file my address under Israel, I guess.
Palestine hasn't existed since 1915. You're looking at the wrong map. You're looking at the wrong definition, right? Don't use a specious allegation to make your point.
It's like saying if I
No,
lived
the
in a
point-
Maddie,
Oh
can
my
we,
God.
wait. We're gonna wait.
You, an
we-
astrophysicist, is smarter than that.
It's like saying if I
Don't
lived
be
during the. That's like
condescending
saying
that. That's shitty.
that's
Okay,
like
so-
saying if I lived in the South
Okay,
during the Civil
can we-
War,
wait.
I'd have to
We gotta
address
throw it to
myself as the
Maddie.
United
We
States.
only have 15
Well, no, because
minutes.
that's not what
Stop.
happened.
Stop. We have to throw it over to Maddie because we got to wrap this up. Maddie, Brant, the preacher, then we're wrapping up.
Sure. I mean, so basically what I wanted to say, aside from that like tangent, was this. Between 2008 and 2020, there were 5,600 Palestinian deaths. During that exact same time frame, 250 Israelis died. Let's think about that disparity. That's a lot. The US's generous funding of the Iron Dome is a double standard. It's crazy because while DC is so hyper focused on providing endless lines of defense for Israel, be they physical, legal, or political, virtually no effort or even serious discussion is put into saving the lives of Palestinian civilians and defending them against the injustices and abuses they suffer under occupation every single day. So if the message of the Iron Dome is that every single life is precious and that we should be investing in defenses to protect civilians, it's a message that is unequally heard and totally unequally enforced. So I don't see why there's any debate on that. It's morally incumbent on the United States as Israel's closest ally and biggest military donor to ensure by any means necessary that the number of both Israeli and Palestinian casualties be brought to zero. And part of that is not and the whole like rationale for like, well, that's Palestine or it's Israel or whatever. The fact that like the United States as a policy has not recognized Palestine as a sovereign entity and in fact still articulates that it is a part of Israel. That is why when Katarana brings up, well, then why aren't we protecting the civilians within Israel? Because the way we recognize Israel as a state encompasses the occupied territories that are also known as Palestine. So why do we separate out or prioritize protecting civilian life in certain parts of the country, but in other parts we're just kind of like, well, we'll leave them to their own devices.
Okay, so Maddie, this is to you. But the Iron Dome encompasses what Israel recognizes as its own land. That's what the Iron Dome encompasses. The Iron Dome also, out of 4,000 rockets sent by Hassam, right? It neutralized 90% of the rockets before they were able to hit ground. If Hassam was able to hit every rocket on the ground, the casualties would be much different. And I'm not quite sure if you... I mean, are you just against proxy wars? Because that's essentially what this is a proxy war versus Iran versus the United States.
She's
Is
against
essentially what this
accountability.
is a proxy war.
She's against accountability
I
on the
would
person
dispute that
launching the rockets
characteristic.
first.
Brant, you are next, actually.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, what's causing the necessity for these Iron Domes to be made? It's the fact that there's an aggression from a different side, creating.
Why is there the
need.
aggression? We could just keep going in a circle. Like, why is there the aggression? Would the aggression have happened if it weren't for the Nakba at the beginning of the expansion of settlements? No.
I mean,
Are
do
the
you have a
Israelis
count where
launching
Israel
missiles
has
into the West Bank?
locally bombed anybody offensively, or like used
Sorry?
military? Do you have any proof that Israel has used military force offensively, specifically against Palestinians living in Israel outside of a contract that ended?
How far back are we going?
I'm just saying in general.
Well, say that something that justifies the defensive thing is Israel launching unmanned, unguided rockets into the West Bank?
Wait,
Do
I'm
you have
sorry.
any-
Do you think
have any
missiles are the only form of offense? Like, would anyone here say that the expansion of settlements isn't offensive?
Well, I mean,
Okay,
when it
so
comes
you're
to
talking
the
in
necessity
terms,
for Iron Dome,
talking about combat.
The
terms,
Iron
right?
Dome isn't used to protect anything from that.
I mean, it doesn't
Well,
work.
it's to, it's
Iron
probably
Dome
to
doesn't
protect them
prevent
from the response of
integration.
doing that for decades.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
look, we're not arguing. We're not arguing that the argument.
I'm just
isn't-
asking, like, if no one
Hang on.
thinks, if everyone agrees that the expansion of settlements
Bear
is
with me
offensive,
just a
then
second. Bear with me just a second. Are you saying that just simply the very nature that because of the lack of progress between the Palestinians and the Israelis, that the Israelis are sort of amping up the game in terms of settlements, that they're building things. They're not going in and shooting people. They're not blowing things up. They're not clearing the ground, so to speak. Okay. And
Are they
and then
displacing people?
wait a second. I'll give you a chance to respond. I promise.
Okay.
I'll shut up.
Like the backtrack,
Okay.
the chorus behind you.
And you got like a barbershop course behind you or something.
I don't have any
Great.
barbershop. Hang on. Okay, well, if I do, I apologize. I'll turn it off in a second. But the bottom line is, right, is that the Iron Dome is a defensive weapon system, right? It is designed to prevent things from coming inbound. You're saying that the Palestinians, and Kat was actually sort of alluding to this. I finally figured it out because I'm old and slow. But that if the West Bank and Gaza are technically still part of the one-state solution before they get to the two-state solution, that the Iron Dome should be protecting Gaza, should be protecting, the West Bank. Well, the problem is that nobody in Israel is launching fucking rockets at the West Bank or Gaza, right? They're not unilaterally just launching offensive weapons to try to make a political point. And that's entirely the argument here. Hezbollah and Hamas are launching political attacks, and they're using civilians as to be the human shields for it. And anybody that honestly that believes, regardless of what you think the value of human life is, if you believe, right, that it's okay to hide your citizens underneath the rockets that you're launching towards your quote unquote political enemies, and then you can stand up and try to claim moral ground when the Israeli army comes after you and blows up your school that you launched those rockets from, that's kind of disingenuous. Now, there should be a solution. I will be the first to admit to everybody, there should be a friggin' solution where these two populations can work together. But honestly, they have gone at each other for hundreds and hundreds of years. The Arabs built a mosque on top of the Jewish temple.
Okay, now, I don't think we're going to put this back to what happened like 2,000 years ago. Okay, we don't need to do that, right?
Because if you do not think that the problems in the Middle East aren't oriented around deep, very centered, very personal things to people in that region, you are being disingenuous to
there were Jews and there were Christians and there were Muslims living in Palestine like before 1945.
That is correct.
Yeah,
that is correct.
We got to move it over to Preacher because we have to wrap this up or we're going to go over time. Preacher.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to try to do it all in one clean swoop. I don't know if I'll remember everything because, well, I'm kind of slow and ADHD, happy. Anyway, the problem here is this. When you talk about Israel and Palestine's, everybody's talking about the defense that Israel's putting up. Nobody's talking about the offense that Hamas is putting out because it's not against the Palestinian people. Listen, the difference between terrorist state and non-terrorist state, like I said before, terrorist state feels it's okay to, what NPU was just saying, to hide behind the citizens. So yeah, unfortunately, very unfortunately, there have been Palestinian deaths. However, without the Iron Dome there would have been a lot more Palestinian deaths because Israel would have just been launching nonchalant, just boom, 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 where they think it's coming from. Right now, they have it set up so with the Iron Dome, they have a chance to at least see where those missiles come from, and they can do the knocking, the roof knocking, and hopefully people get out. Unfortunately, yes, there are civilian casualties. That's what you get when you get a coward terrorist organization that hides behind people, that uses humans as shields because they don't see them as anything else but a piece of material to be thrown to the side. They don't care. Now, we can sit here and say, well, why aren't we funding listen, we would probably fund the Palestinian people if they weren't being ruled by Hamas. We cannot take Hamas out of the situation because Hamas is the proxy for Iran, which wants to destroy Israel. We cannot take them out of this equation. Hamas is the reason for the Iron Dome. It's not the Palestinian people themselves. It is the terrorist organization that has taken over their government. So we could go back all the way back. I just went back. It goes way back. The history of Palestine. Gaza does have its own area code and zip code. I don't know if that makes any difference. I don't think it should make any difference. And listen, I feel for the Palestinian people. I have watched somebody gave me a video that showed 3 Palestinians, 3 Israelis in a circle and being asked some hardcore questions, and watching their responses, man, it was heartbreaking, especially from the Palestinian side. But until Hamas is taken out of the equation, we're probably going to keep butting heads. I'm done.
Okay, wrapping it up. We're going to have everybody to have their closing statements before the last topic, which is on the Arizona audit. It's going to be. Now we're going to go. Oh, and for everybody in chat, just quickly, I would really appreciate, and everybody watching this on YouTube, I would appreciate if you could go and support the YouTube channel, as we're over to 50,000 subscribers. We're trying to get there. We just hit 45,000, and we're only 5,000 away. We're getting closer every day. So if you want to put exclamation point YouTube in chat and just go to DylanBurnsTV and hit the subscribe button, it costs you literally nothing, and it helps the channel. If you want to support me after you do that, you can always donate to the channel, subscribe, anything like that. It takes time and effort to put these things together, and it can be quite frustrating. And if not, Joe will himself pay you a visit. Now we're going to throw it over to Brant to start the closing statements.
I mean, just in conclusion, because I feel like we kind of stretched what could be a small topic into a much bigger topic. When it comes to funding the dome, I'm completely in support of it. It is a reaction, not a proaction. So it is not something that can be used offensively. It purely has one functionality, and that is that it is just a meat sponge that flies up, attracts a rocket, stops potentially even Palestinian deaths in Israel. But all of that aside, Israel's not perfect. I would like to see them try to work it out and try to compromise. We all know that Hamas in those particular areas is not going to allow that to happen until, like Preach said, until that is removed from that state. You really can't take that relationship seriously. And so, I mean, it's the same thing as holding the U.S. or any other country accountable if they proxied through another country attacking, a smaller, indefensible country. We would have the same type of measure to approach. I feel like there's politics in this, so it makes it something that we have to talk about. But yeah, like I said, in conclusion, I completely support it, and I would love to see both sides stop fighting. But we know that's not going to happen. It's been going on for a long time, and it's going to be going on for a much longer time. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Now we're going to throw it over to Denims.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with most of what Maddie said because it was very well spoken and very based. And I think that the funding of the Iron Dome has other problems because obviously no one here, especially not the fucking leftists, are going to be like, well, I think we should just not fund the Iron Dome altogether because those people should fucking die. I don't think anyone is saying that. And I think you would be hard pressed to find someone who would unironically say that. I think most of the people who feel weird about Iron Dome funding have to do with people not liking the fact that Palestinians are subjected to the will of Israel. Who's supposed to go next?
Brad would
Oh,
be
okay,
next.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll go next.
just
I
yeah.
apologize. I didn't know it was my turn. I apologize. I think that the Iron Dome funding is completely appropriate. I think the Iron Dome funding is a very expensive. It's a very expensive defensive weapon. It's not an offensive weapon, like I've stated before. It's a very defensive weapon. And to the people who say that we should be defending Palestine with the Iron Dome, I think it's completely asinine. That we're going to sit here and defend a terrorist as they fire rockets from hospitals and from schools, that we defend the terrorist nation that's doing that and it's allowing it to happen. I just don't see the call for that. I don't see the call to defend ISIS. I don't see a call to defend Al Qaeda. But somehow when it comes to Hamas, it seems to be a different issue. I don't know if it's just because people don't like Jews. I don't know what exactly it is. All I know is that people seem to have an issue when it comes to Israel defending itself. Now, with that point, I'll kind of rest my case.
Kat, you're next.
You know, I'm something of a Black Jewish person myself, so I have absolutely no problem with you know, a religious group not wanting to be persecuted. But I also don't think that that's justification to persecute other groups, and I just don't really think that the idea of further allowing one side of a conflict to essentially get absolutely no casualties so that they can turn 100% offensive makes any sense. I think we should be preserving human life all around. Obviously, that's not a crazy take, but at the same time, it's just, it's, you know, overall, over the last how many years of this conflict, it's always been the Palestinian side that's receiving most of the blows. And this is just going to further propagate that. And it seems like this is just, you know, the beginning to this basically being finished, because the little territory that's left is going to be absolutely decimated soon. Yeah, just Palestine isn't entirely run by a terrorist group, and not everybody that lives there is a terrorist. Just like there are bad people that live in Israel that would love to see the decimation of the Palestinian people, there are bad people that live on the other side, but that doesn't mean that everybody on the other side needs to go fuck themselves and die. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Loner Bucks.
Yeah, I feel like people know what they're doing when they keep saying like the Iron Dome is defensive. It's got nothing to do with offense. It's kind of like saying like if someone's got some pasta and they ask for water and you say, well, why do you need the water? You're not going to eat the water. Like, no, it's part of an involved process. As a very wise man would say, it's simply asinine. And that's why the Iron Dome is not an isolated act of defense. It is part of a very extensive political network. It's the thing that basically allows Israel to do what it's doing, to expand settlements, to throw thousands of people off their land, to exercise control over areas where, you know, by contrast, Palestinians, I think in the West Bank, I think 1.5% of them get their applications accepted to build houses or to build in the area. So yeah, and I'm kind of surprised, by the way, because like a bunch of Americans here, you know, like, don't know about you guys, but I'm from Scotland where haggis isn't illegal. We love freedom, and the right to defend your property is actually extremely important, whether by life or death. And if you've got a country that has spent the last 60 or 70 years displacing hundreds of thousands of people, then, you know, that response is going to happen, and then the Iron Dome is going to be necessary to deal with that. So don't act like this is defensive. Like, Israel has never been defensive. All right.
Okay, now it's going to be More Perfect Union.
Oh, wow. I thought it was going to go last. I appreciate it. Wow. The ineptitude of the argument has been pretty systemic. The Palestinians have been employed as a pawn, a political pawn, and Dylan, you have experience in international affairs, so you understand this. They are a pawn to be used by other state actors, right? The Iranians have been, and they're really good at this all over the Middle East. They use other actors in order to kind of shade their intent and activity, right? The Arabs got pissed off at the Jews because Palestinians, who were actually Jordanian, they were the equivalent of Australians, right? For the Middle East. They basically were thrown off their land, and the UN gave Israel the land that it had for like 6,000 years and been thrown off multiple times, right? We keep talking about like indigenous peoples and their rights. The Israelis owned that shit for 6,000 years, if you believe like the history of their religion, right? So they have a right to sort of defend themselves. And whether you believe that somebody is being right or wrong in the method in which they're carrying it forward, they're simply defending themselves. And Iron Dome, the argument that is at hand is whether or not it should be funded. And if it gets funded to prevent the loss of innocent life, Anybody on this panel who argues against that is anti-Semitic, is racist, and is not based at all. If there are other political arguments that you want to make, that's fine. Let's have those conversations. Let's try to find a reasonable settlement towards those things. Come on. Preventing missiles from indiscriminately killing civilians. Anybody that argues that is just really absolutely on the backside of history.
There's a lot of things I could say about those, but the thing that interested me the most was the how you said
You're the moderator.
You said anti-Semitic, racist, and the last
It is
thing.
anti-Semitic
Wait, let me finish.
because
Let me
you're
finish.
promoting
Let me finish.
ethnic
Let me
bravery.
finish. I can't even end it on a joke.
You're
Can't
the
even end it-
moderator,
Can't even
right?
end it
You're
on
the
a joke.
moderator. You're the
You're
moderator.
right. I am the moderator. That's why you're muted. So
And
I
it's time to be
like
funny.
I
I
like
really
that
want
it
to
was.
respond to that.
I like how it was anti-Semitic, racist, but the worst part is it wasn't based at all. Out of all of the 3 options,
Yeah.
the
And
not being
most of
based.
all-
Most of all, it's unbased. Okay, we're gonna throw it to Preacher.
Okay, well, I just want you guys to know that I have been told by left and right in my chat that I am based. So we could take it. It's on the internet. It must be true. The Iron Dome, I don't say it's defensive to skirt around anything. The property rights going on, they're fought out in court battles. They're not fought out with missiles and guns. And when it comes to the Palestinian people, the people themselves, I don't think all the people in Palestine are bad people. I think they're generally great people. Like I said before, I've watched videos of them having their discussions, and I know their plea, and I feel for them. The problem is that they are ruled over by Hamas, and until Hamas is taken out of the picture, then there's going to be a need for an Iron Dome, because at one point alone, there were thousands of missiles launched at Israel from Hamas. Now, the Iron Dome stops those missiles from hitting. Therefore, Israel does not have to respond with thousands going back. They can take the time, find out where they're coming from, and do their best to hit that target. Unfortunately, like I said, Hamas hides behind civilians because they're a bunch of cowards. That's what terrorists do. It's a whole new type of warfare. It's not gentlemen's warfare where they go face to face. So, I support the Iron Dome. I do believe it's completely defensive. I do not see Israel as the offensive country. And I'm not saying that just because I love Israel. I'm saying that because I've looked at the history of it all. And has Israel done things that are not perfect? Of course they have. Every country has. Can we sit there and say, like, well, we value freedom? Of course we value freedom in this country, but you know what? We're not Israeli or Palestine. We don't look at property rights and freedom the same way that they do over there. So they've got to take their stuff through their courts, let them hash that out. I wish there was a two-state agreement, but like I said, as long as Hamas is in the picture being a proxy fighter for Iran, it's not going to be peaceful. And unfortunately, yes, Palestinian people who are good people, whether I believe in Palestine as a country or not, doesn't matter. The people themselves are good people. I feel for them. It is Hamas. I'll leave it at people are people. I'll leave it at that.
Last person for this topic is going to be Maddie.
Okay, cool. So just before I get into just tying up what my overall position is, wanted to say that I don't think anyone here is anti-Iron Dome. In fact, the Iron Dome is a good thing because it preserves civilian life, and I would say that is something that's absolutely worth funding and creating. I just wish that same care for preserving life of Israeli citizens. I just wish that we exhibited that same concern to Palestinian civilians, especially given that most of the casualties that have occurred have been on the Palestinian side, and that ratio is pretty substantial. Even according to the Human Rights Watch, Israeli authorities have systematically repressed and discriminated against Palestinians in ways that far exceed the security justifications they often provide. Again, was directly from the annual report from Human Rights Watch. And that's, again, this isn't to say that the US shouldn't ever sell weapons to Israel or cooperate in any sort of defensive programs or never support them in non-military ways. This is simply saying that giving this much aid to Israel is clearly unnecessary, given its current posture. Israel can defend itself just fine, and they can also acquire whatever American weapons or systems or technology they need without getting an annual check from the United States government to the same capacity that they have been for the last few decades. It just simply isn't necessary. They are an economic powerhouse. They can afford to take care of themselves in that way. And yeah, again, no one's anti Iron Dome. No one's like pro Hamas here. We're just saying that, like, maybe if we're going to protect civilian life, let's extend that same courtesy to folks on the other side, because those civilians had no choice that they were born to a Palestinian family, or they were born as Palestinians and not as Israelis. They have no choice whether or not they are participating in this crisis. They're just trying to live their lives and raise their families. So maybe we should put a little bit more effort into protecting them too, and recognizing that they have just as much a right to exist and exist peacefully as Israeli citizens.
Okay.
That's my take.
Let's get into the last topic of the night. We are running behind schedule. So the last topic of the night is the Arizona audit. We got the results of the Arizona audit, and it did not overturn the elections in Arizona. Biden has been, I think, certified for I don't know, like the 7th time. I forget exactly, but he is still the person who has won Arizona. And so with the Arizona audit, which was the one that everybody was watching, it comes to a close. My question is, how with the Arizona audit ending, how do you view the results of the Arizona audit? And with us now being almost a year away from the 2020 election, how do you view how secure that election was, with us having so many audits and legal problems, et cetera, post that? We're going to start in the top left-hand corner with Snapback Hat Man.
Yep. Snapback hat man coming at you here. Okay, so I covered the Arizona audit for a really long time. My channel, we do a lot of objective-based, I guess you could say reactive Andy journalism, and we watch a lot of things that are coming out from all sources. And one of the things was keeping up with the Arizona audit. It did indeed prove that either people did not follow the election code in some way, whether it was not adequately filling out the ballot or registering from a previous address and then filling out a ballot and voting even though you lived somewhere else. I think there were even some dead voters. I don't think there were enough dead voters really to make a big impact on the overall outcome. But I mean, I already knew from the start this wasn't going to overturn anything. Just watching the crappy, slow tar process that the government is at getting anything done. And then you mix in the fact that you had January 6th, you had a lot of incidents that put the movement back from getting to its goal, which was to figure out what exactly happened in the election, regardless of the outcome. And with the Arizona audit, you had a lot of hiccups. They were going to pause it a couple times. They kicked one of the guys out that was going to be one of the chief analyzers. I don't know what the exact title was of the gentleman, but he was one of the leaders of the audit. He wasn't allowed to participate in it. So I kind of chalk the audit up as just a big nothing burger, even though it did prove that there were 44,000 possible examples of votes being counted that shouldn't have counted. And I would really like to see, regardless of election outcomes, there always be audits and make it random, however you want to do it, because we need transparency. We need to be able to go back and check these things. And going back, and whenever you do an audit, you're not only checking if voter fraud happened, you're checking for venues and routes that people can take to cheat or disenfranchise the legitimacy of an election. And if we don't have any, just like we have the FBI always training on how to catch the next bad guy or how to be prepared technologically to get the next digital crime, there's no reason why we shouldn't be at least using this audit to figure out what the results were.
Okay, so I said we were running behind, so everybody else
My bad.
gonna have to do like 1 minute max, okay? So Denims.
I mean, from my understanding, the audit just proved that Biden had won the election, and it ended up giving him a couple hundred more votes as well, if I'm not mistaken. Not to mention that like Trump's own Department of Justice and justices he appointed couldn't find like fraud. Like, I feel like those should be like the most unbiased sources. If they're saying that there wasn't fraud, then like who else could you possibly trust? It feels like a lot of people just want to be told that there was more fraud than there actually was. Okay, I yield my time.
Okay, next is going to throw it over to Sprout.
I don't really care about the Arizona audit. With the Arizona audit, I really think it's going to come much of anything. What I really did care about was the Texas Supreme Court case that they filed a lawsuit against. They filed a lawsuit against Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. That's what really mattered. The Supreme Court failed in their duty to take that up because of original jurisdiction. They failed in their duty to take that case up, and that's the case I'd really be interested in seeing playing out instead of the Arizona audit. States not following their own election laws. But I think the Arizona audit starting off was going to be a big nothing burger, which is what it turned out to be. And so I think the wrong case got heard out.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Katarana.
My opening statement is cry harder, I guess. Ta-da. Look, he won. Now we know it for the 45th time. So fun. Cry harder. There you go.
Lona Box.
Yeah, it is really funny just like watching how intense like the cope can become. Like, I mean, there have been more Democrats than Republicans in America since like 2004. So I don't know. I mean, an option would be learn how to please more voters. But I'm actually a bit more doomer about this. I don't think they were actually trying to uncover fraud. I think the agenda now, and it's kind of showing a little bit in this panel, is that they want to sow doubt in future elections. They want to and they're whether they mean to or not, they're doing a very good job at like assembling a following that just doesn't trust any institution, will just trust like the last thing they heard from one of these like demagogues. So yeah, it's kind of concerning.
Okay, next we're throwing it over to More Perfect Union.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a couple of things to unpack in the previous statements, but the fact that the audit it wasn't really honestly about trying to prove systemic fraud. And I'll be the first person to stand up and say that I haven't argued that was the case all along, right? I think that there's evidence, not proof. There's evidence to show that 20 states violated Article 1, Section 4, the mechanism by which that electors can be selected for the office of President of the United States. There's evidence to support that that's the case. It's not just the 6 or 7 states that hinged the election, right? I mean, it goes down to anybody outside of the legislative process, not just the legislature, as the Constitution says, but even extending that to the legislative process, meaning the legislature and the governor who signed a bill, or a veto process that overrides a veto, says that this is the way the election law works in our state. 20 states in 2020 violated that. So the fact that Arizona is coming up with like various things that indicate, and they, in their audit, they find like 7 different kinds of things that should be looked at by the legislature in order to sort of tune up, right? They're not making a problem and saying this is grounds to overturn it. They're saying we recommend you look at these things to sort of make sure that the quality, the integrity of the election is valid. And I think anybody that argues that we shouldn't at least some passing credence to what they say and rule out whether or not there's something valid there that could be done to improve the integrity or quality of the election, that's going to improve people's belief in the outcome of the election. I don't argue and have never argued that there's a problem with the results of the election, right? I just think that the way that the table was set was kind of problematic. And I think that the states need to reassert their rights under the Constitution to determine how electors are selected. That's my point. And I think Arizona indicates pretty cleanly that there's at least some evidence there to say that the legislature should go back and examine some practices and policies about how that's done.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Preacher.
Yeah, I've read the report, which it didn't say who won, who lost. It didn't have to, actually. It went through a bunch of discrepancies that were found, which is eyebrow raising. I'll say that for sure. Personally, I could care less about the Arizona audit. You can go back and look at any of my social media. I didn't give a crap about it the entire time because I'm not one who lives in the past. So I will say, damn the Hippy Dippy for making me go back into the damn past. I did read the report. I have some stats we can go over. I could care less. My focus is on 2022 and 2024. I do believe that whether legitimate reason or not, people do have a suspicious eye towards voting, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see, especially people from the right saying, well, what the hell's the sense of me voting? They're not going to hear my voice anyway. Well, you know what? You can either vote and have a chance they're going to hear your voice, or don't vote and 100% guarantee they're not going to hear it. So make up your mind. Was there some fraud? There's always been fraud in every election from what I've read. And unfortunately, that's sickening to see. But you know what? As long as you have humans, you're going to have ignorance on both sides. On both sides. I wouldn't mind seeing audits each year, maybe random picks, whatever, on both sides, no matter who wins. Like I said, I'm independent. I want to see free and fair elections. I'm looking to the future. I'm not looking at the past, but I guess I have some stats if we want to talk about crap.
Okay, now we're going to throw it over to Maddie.
Well, I, for one, was shocked that a group known as the Cyber Ninjas weren't able to uncover any possible reason for why the election was clearly stolen from Daddy Trump. I was shocked because they had such a strong case to begin with. I mean, have you seen the memes on Facebook? That's irrefutable. Okay. My aunt has posted some very compelling memes. And I was just, I was
Wait, Maddie,
completely
if you're
shocked.
citing these memes, you must post them in the Discord group so everybody else can check your sources.
You gotta share, yes.
You're right. No, thank you for holding me accountable.
I'm not in the Discord
because-
group.
Need the evidence.
So yeah, it's I'm just so again, you know, of course Biden won. Of course Biden won Arizona. It turns out when we talk about, oh well, there should have been an audit for certain things. Do you realize in most states, if an election result is approaching a certain, like if it's has a certain degree of separation between the two candidates, it triggers an automatic audit so that those are you know, reviewed. Like this is something we already have so many policies and processes in place on the back end to ensure that election results are accurate and reflect the will of the people, that like, I don't know, if you were shocked and surprised at this result, I have like so many bridges to sell you. I yield my time.
Okay, now I am going to open this up for general discussion. We have about around 30 minutes for discussion time. So
I got a question for Maddie.
So
Okay.
this has been
No, let me just throw this out, just real quick. Just real quick. So you find it hard to believe that you know, anybody would question the validity of Joe Biden winning. Joe Biden got 81. Hang on, Joe Biden got 81 million votes. In his two previous election runs, he got less than 2% of the entire primary vote. He got
I know that's how primaries work.
a lot of votes
You couldn't
more
fill a
than
gymnasium.
wait a
Does
second.
it surprise you that someone who has previously run could then have a successful
wait a
run?
second. No, you're missing my whole point. Let me finish.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
pick it up for you. It's gonna be a softball for you, I promise.
Wonderful.
But he said he got more votes than Obama. Okay. He got more votes than Obama.
Sure did.
You think that people actually believe that he was the great white hope? He was going to do more than Obama? I don't
want to know what I think.
I care that he won, but come on, let's not.
Is that your question?
I think they just hated Trump.
Yeah, I think they hated Trump more than they loved Biden.
Let's not think that the table wasn't slanted. That there were constitutional issues that at least bear scrutiny to make sure that the people who are constitutionally empowered to decide the manner and selection of presidential electors, that those people are the ones who get to do it, not secretaries of state, not boards of election, unless obviously the stipulation is unless that the legislative process has said that the Secretary of State
question.
I'm going to assume there's a question in there somewhere. Yeah, I think that a lot of people voted for Joe Biden because they really didn't want Trump to be president again. And I think I think that, you know what supports that is that all the research they've done into what actually motivated voters to get out to the polls. They've done polls on perception. They've done analysis on what behaviors and preferences and everything motivated people to show up to the polls in the numbers they did. And largely it's because people were fucking terrified that Trump was going to be reelected, especially given how shocked they were when he was elected in the first place in 2016. They didn't want a repeat of that. This is the kind of thing that we have a lot of data on because largely I personally I went and canvassed for Democratic candidates. You can ask people in those direct conversations what their motivator is or what they have as a priority and what's making them vote the way that they are. And largely the prevailing reason that motivated the majority of Americans was that they did not want Donald Trump to stick around in the White House. So yeah, also I would argue too that you would see an increase in people voting because the United States is bigger and the number of eligible voters in the United States is more than when Obama was running. So, math.
Yeah, but you know what? Hold on. Listen.
Wait. Sprout was next. He raised his hand. I'm gonna give.
Yeah, but he's got a bad hairdo.
Yeah, well, that's too bad. I mean, in comparison to me, you all do.
Pete sakes, wear a hat, damn it.
We're not supposed to attack people.
Weird flex. Weird flex.
So, first off, I have a very important message that needs to be put out. The election was stolen. Okay, Joe Biden might be in the White House, but I built myself a new Oval Office. It's in the Trump Tower. Okay, Joe Biden has a lawn to look at. I have the entirety of New York City. Okay, ask my friends. They've all seen it. They say my view is so much better. Okay, enough memeing. This has been public record for quite a while that I've said that the Republicans should not do what the Democrats did. Unfortunately, they did. They went after and said that Biden didn't win this election correctly. I said that we should have accepted Biden as the new president and move forward and wish Biden the best and just hope for the best. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten that so far. I still hope Biden does better. He's got 3 more years to prove me wrong. But I just don't see it coming. I think that the most important thing that we should have heard out is the Texas lawsuit against Georgia, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin. I don't think that would have overturned the election, but it definitely would have provided precedent as to how elections are supposed to be ran statewide. And so I think that would have provided good precedent for elections moving forward. And I think that would have provided a lot more security in people's minds that elections moving forward actually have a process of which they can be challenged. And if elections are done incorrectly, then they can be fixed for the next election. I think that would have provided a lot of security. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court failed on their obligation to do that due to original jurisdiction. And the Supreme Court really failed in their duties to do that. And I don't think the Arizona audit changed anyone's mind. In fact, I think it's just made everyone go, "Oh yeah, look, I'm right." And so no matter what side you're on, so I think that the Texas lawsuit is a much bigger case than the Arizona audit ever was.
Okay, next is gonna be Preacher, then Cat, then Loner.
All right, so I'm in Pennsylvania, and I'll be the first to tell you that I can't stand our governor, our secretary. I can't stand any of that. And yeah, what they did was, I don't know how they're getting away with it. I honestly don't. I think they're still being fought. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not dwelling on the past. But here's my issue: is exactly what Maddie had said. Is that people voted more because they hated Trump than they liked Biden. In other words, they voted with their emotions and their feelings, and you cannot choose the next free leader of the free world with your damn emotions. Now, listen, I'll be the first to tell you, Trump's an ass. Trump is brash. Trump is a jackwagon. But his policies, did he say mean stuff in tweets? Of course he did. Do I support that? Absolutely not. Do I like the way he took on the press? Yes, someone needs to tell the press they're a bunch of jackwagons. Do I like the way he trolled some people? Yes, some people needed to be trolled. But he has been an ass. But his policies were great for this country. And since everybody voted with emotions like Trump's so bad, let's vote against him. Now we have the border crisis that we have. We have Afghanistan. We have all this crap going on. And guess what? COVID's still here. So I don't know. Voting with our emotions is probably the most immature and irresponsible thing we could do as United States citizens. I'll leave it at that.
Cat?
On what basis do some of you think that people vote for presidents? Because we choose presidents for a plethora of dumbass fucking reasons. Most people are not like politically literate. It's just like, damn. Oh, like I've actually know people that were sold on Biden because they heard him say, "Yes, my son is a drug addict and he's recovering, and I'm proud of him." And they're like, brave. Like some people chose him for that. Some people choose Trump because they're like wall and somehow Mexico pay. Yeah, that sounds feasible. Like we choose presidents based off of just absolutely stupid shit, and very few people actually know what the fuck they're doing.
No argument here.
Yeah,
Totally based. Totally based. What they say, right?
I learned this in physics school. Past that, though,
physics would be a little more based than politics. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I also wonder, why is there now like a new kind of focus from going from the audit to Texas and now these other things? Like,
no,
why?
Just to clear that up, I've always been about the Texas lawsuit. I think the Texas lawsuit is the most prevalent lawsuit that came out of the 2020 election. I think it's the only lawsuit that we should have really looked into, and I think the Supreme Court had a constitutional obligation to at least hear that lawsuit, which they failed on.
Hey, Dylan, I want to ask Sprout a question to clarify that, which I think would help.
And then we got to go to Loner.
No, fair enough. But Sprout, why do you think that the lawsuit, which really pitted Texas's argument, as I understood it, was that they were arguing that the failure to observe constitutional alignment with the selection of presidential electors actually harmed the citizens or the residents of Texas? Why do you think that was the problem? And why do you think the Supreme Court actually failed in their duty? Because that's one of the few original intent, right? The original jurisdiction cases that the Supreme Court has, which is like conflicts between states. So
let me put it simply, right?
More about that.
Let me put it simply. The Texas voters voted who they thought was best for president. The Texas voters then elected a panel of Republican voters that were going to vote for President Trump in the 2020 election. Now, those voters, not necessarily Texas citizens, but the voters that they elected into the positions to vote for President Trump, otherwise known as the electoral voters, were disenfranchised when other states did not follow their own state laws to pick
Sorry.
their own electoral voters. Legislatures did not change their laws so that way they were legal in the election. That didn't happen. And so that's what Texas's lawsuit all based around, was that their electoral voters were disenfranchised by other states not following their own election laws when it came to a national federal election for president.
And is it your opinion that the failure of the Supreme Court to take that up really was a usurpation of like Texas's sovereignty under the republic, the formation of the republic, that they should be able to bring that grievance to the Supreme Court, to have the Supreme Court say that, well, we need to look at why that was, and in fact, if not saying it was, but if other states violated their duty under the Constitution, primarily Article 1, Section 4,
Of course,
if they did that would represent a dissolution or a diminution of the electoral votes of the representatives for the state of Texas. Is that not fair to make that statement?
Of course, that's my opinion. I think that Supreme Court denying even to hear Texas's case left Texas with one option, which Texas didn't take, thank God. But it left Texas with one option, which is to go to war with these states, because sovereign states have two options. They can either go to the Supreme Court and bring their grievance there and have it settled legally through the process of the Supreme Court, which is why the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, or they can go to war with those states. So thank God Texas didn't take the second option when the first option was denied to them.
Dylan,
Okay.
I turn it back over to you. Thank you for allowing that digression.
No problem. Loner?
Didn't the Supreme Court? I'm just from memory here, but I think the Supreme Court said that it didn't have a case. But yeah, I guess I can maybe extend a bit of a branch to the Republican side, though. It's like, yeah, electoral fraud, like,
Oh, just
not
screw the
number of votes,
independents,
but-
right?
yeah, like electoral fraud happens like quite a lot. Like we know this, like in the UK, like the Brexit campaign was like overspent, like they broke the law. And then we know that pretty much every election you have like at least a dozen conservative election agents getting arrested and found guilty of fraud, like people going and impersonating other party members and things like that. But the question is, it's not the question of whether or not fraud happens. We already have laws against this. The question is whether or not electoral fraud and wrongdoing actually gives us a reason to want to change the process or to not trust it. And I think that's really the question that's like underneath all of this, like, because you can have your cases, like every election has fraud. It's just like, where are you kind of concluding with that? What is there something you want to change about the system or what?
Who are you asking a question to?
I would actually like to respond to that if
Probably
doesn't
you
mind.
primarily, but anyone. Yeah.
I think that in the states that didn't follow their own election laws, of course it degrades the citizens' confidence in the election, that the state can decide whatever they want to do goes, and the Supreme Court isn't going to hold them accountable. And they set precedent for that. And so, yes, of course, I think that in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that it sets that precedent that, yeah, the state can do whatever they want to. They can tell you to vote illegally. And then once you do vote illegally, oh, what are we supposed to do? They thought they were voting legally. Yes, of course, that sets that precedent to where people are going to start doubting the integrity of their state election. Do I think the federal election integrity is down in the banks? No. I think that these states need to go through and either legalize through the legislative branch the processes of which they did the election, or do away with the processes they did election, because it can't be put through the legislative branch. And those are really your only two options underneath the Constitution. It either goes through the legislative branch and gets legalized, or it doesn't. You don't get the best of both worlds, where you can decide, yes, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this election illegally, and we're just gonna like manipulate to choose who we want to go as our electoral voters.
You are talking about a case that the Supreme Court threw out because they said that they didn't have any standing, right?
I'm talking about the Texas case versus Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. That's the case I'm referring to.
Yeah. That was thrown out by the so
That was
again,
thrown
like,
out,
this
and
is,
again, I said that the Supreme Court failed on their obligation to at least hear the case because of original jurisdiction. Do you know what original jurisdiction is?
no. Go on.
Okay, original jurisdiction is the legal idea that states can sue other states because the founding fathers of the Constitution understood that states had two options, right? They could either go to legal process or they could go to war with other states. And so the legal process was original jurisdiction because of the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court has that obligation because that's the only court states can go to when they want to file a lawsuit when they have a grievance. That grievance should at least be heard.
So does original jurisdiction mandate that the Supreme Court has to hear the case? They can't just.
In my constitutional opinion, yes, that the original jurisdiction mandates
Has to
that
be
the Supreme
filed
Court
correctly,
must
though.
listen
That's
to
the
the case.
problem.
I have the
That's you
actual
disagreeing
answer.
with the majority Republican Supreme
I
Court.
think the
the
reason why I don't
full
think
answer.
that they're
Wait,
I don't
wait,
think
wait,
that they're
wait. I
sorry.
didn't hear what Loner said, and that was a Loner. What did you say?
Yeah, I just said that's essentially you disagreeing with the Republican majority Supreme Court on that
Okay,
decision.
I could disagree with the Republican majority of Supreme Court. I'm not a Republican, so come at me harder, I guess.
How dare you?
Okay, so
Time
next is
out.
gonna be
Time
next
out.
is gonna be Preacher.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to go way back. I think Kat had asked something about why we got off onto this, and I'll be honest with you. Like I said in the beginning, I could care less about the Arizona audit. Do I believe Joe Biden won? Yes, as much as it pains me to say it, yes. Do I believe that the guy who couldn't excite his own party and his running mate who fell dead last in all percentages for Democratic candidates in the primaries got 80 million votes over and were more popular than the most popular of Barack Obama? Absolutely not. I do believe there was some fraud. Was it enough to overturn the election? No. But as Luder was saying, every election has fraud, unfortunately. Unfortunately, politics is an ugly game, and you're going to have dog-eat-dog bullcrap going on. But I got off onto my tirade because I would like to see more responsible voting. Don't vote on emotions, and I don't want to see people who are on the right saying, oh, well, geez, my vote's not going to count, so I might as well stay home. Well, then you're a jackwagon, too, because you're just throwing in the
I really
towel.
like that word.
I like jackwagon and asshat. Asshat's a good word too. They can be asshats if they're staying home instead of going out and voting and letting their voice.
If you're willing to
Would
say
you-
ass, why not just say jackass? Like if you're willing to say
Would you-
asshat, why not just say jackass?
No.
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are you saying that
fun.
like it would be let's say someone goes and votes and their rationale is I do not want Trump in the White House. What about that is what if they didn't arrive to that illogically or emotionally? What if this was what about that makes it illogical?
Good question. Very good
Exactly.
question. Good question. What I'm saying is
Specifics.
a lot of people. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. My uncles who are in Ithaca, New York, and I could go on. The sky is blue. They're like, oh, well, you hate the color green. All right, we battle left and right. And their thing is, it's not the policies that Trump had that they hated. They didn't like how he was brash, which he was. He was an ass, a complete ass, and has been. They were voting more against his personality and not his policies. My own uncle said, like during the primaries, he's a Bernie bro, and he was like, "Oh, Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that, all against Joe Biden." But then he turns around and says, "Well, I'm going to support Joe Biden." I'm like, "Dude, you just sat there bashing this guy. You couldn't stand any of his policies, but now because he's running against a guy that you think is mean, you're going to vote for him." That's
So
what
that's
I'm
a nice
talking about.
anecdote. That's a nice anecdote. But when we're talking about like voters as a whole,
Right?
and
I'll
also
see-
even if they don't like love the person running, wouldn't it? What makes it an illogical decision if they look at one versus the other? They don't particularly love either one, but they prefer one over the other. What
They
about that
don't.
is illogical?
That's the problem. They don't prefer one over the other. What there was, I'm gonna have to find it. I don't have it right with me now because it wasn't part of the program. But there was a study done that showed more people voted against Trump than they did for Biden. In other words, they don't like Biden as their candidate, but he's not that mean guy over here putting out mean tweets.
No, that's
That to me is irresponsible. Like, if you like Biden's policies and you think he's better than Trump, go ahead, vote for him. I'm not going to tell you not to. It's the United States of America. You have that right. But I think it's very irresponsible. And I'm not saying they should vote for Trump. There's always third party. Remember, every state has their third party. Kanye West, come on, man. Why aren't we voting for Kanye instead of Trump? Kanye's nice. I like Kanye.
Literally so many reasons. Literally so many reasons.
Maybe, but he's base, all right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
honestly, right, the practical reality, right? And Preacher's right. If you hate fucking Trump, you can hate Trump. You can vote against Trump because you hate fucking Trump. If you vote for Biden simply because you hate Trump, that's kind of a problem because Biden thus far has been a fucking disaster. And even though you guys think on the left that
but he doesn't have mean tweets. Sorry.
Hang on a second.
Shut up.
If you think that Biden is simply better than Trump, I would argue there's plenty of evidence to suggest that maybe it's not so much, right?
Historically, people have just continuously voted for people for stupid reasons. People didn't vote for Obama because they don't want a black person in office. People voted for Hillary because they like vaginas. Like,
what about audits? Are y'all down with audits? Like, is there never a threshold to ask for an audit to get honest results?
They literally have that threshold. They articulate exactly what that threshold is, and that's why in like majority of cases, especially in a presidential election, an automatic audit is normally triggered when it's anywhere within the realm of possibility that there could be a change in who actually won, whether it's a countywide audit, whether it's a statewide audit. Like, these are that threshold's already established. So you're arguing for something that literally already exists. The Republicans didn't like the outcome of all of those repeated audits, and that's why they we need to have the site on.
I mean,
that's literally what happened in 2000, right?
Well, we got the results that we got from it, right? And they're more of up in the air nothing burgers. But does that not, it doesn't delegitimize the fact that if the constituency has a general concern that either an audit happened and it fixed the problem, which didn't happen here, or we look into methods in which we can tighten up our voting system.
Yeah, so do that. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I don't think there's really a problem with it, like on its own head. If we just say every once in a while we would like random districts, counties, states to be audited just to make sure that the elections are secure, I think that's completely fine. Like, how else are we going to know that we live in a functioning democracy? As somebody that is from a country in which I don't trust my elections whatsoever, it's something that's nice to see. We did an audit. And it didn't show that, the dictator stuffed the ballots with votes. Very nice. Let's have woohoo! Yay to that.
Awesome, Kat. So there were seven recommendations that were done out of the Arizona ballot. None of the recommendations in the ballot said overturn the election. Oh, Jesus Christ, overturn the election. They said, let us look at these 7 things and say, does the legislature need to consider rules or legal processes to tighten up these various things? And you, to your credit, thank you so much, I appreciate that. You said that if the state looks at the outcome of an election and they think that there should be something that requires them to tune up their processes to further ensure that the outcome or the results of those elections are valid and people won't have what they obviously did in this election, which is to question the bullshit, whether it's legally or metaphysically or like on a crazy Sunday night after you've been drunk, question the outcome of the election. If the state can do what it needs to do to ensure that its laws, that it is constitutionally bound under Article 1, Section 4, if they tune up their audit process to make sure that those elections are valid and therefore give additional credence that people can believe that things are good, that's a good thing, right? You would agree with that?
I mean, I appreciate what you're saying. That yeah, like if there's any irregularity in an
No
election
question,
or any
answer.
crimes committed, then they
It was
need to.
actually to Kat, but if you want to
Oh, go
answer
on.
yes, I'll let you. Otherwise, I want to let Kat say yes because I love Kat and she's a wonderful person.
I'm a misogynist, so you need to check me sometimes.
I don't even care. I mean, if you're a misogynist, that's up to somebody else to just. But I love Kat, so I want her
sciatica massage.
first.
Yeah, I think no matter what the utility of it is, I don't have a problem with people wanting to check an election, no matter what it is. And if we realize even like in the audit process needs to be tuned, that's cool to me as well. I don't really think that I need to go and give a justification to my legislation to say I would like this election to be looked at, because as long as people have a feeling that it needs to be looked at, it needs to be looked at. I just would like it if people accept the audit results afterwards.
Yeah, but it's fair to say that we should have a process to audit, right? We should just,
of course,
we should make sure that the election is audited, and that every election is audited, and everybody can have certainty and belief of it. So that we have this bullshit that all the people on the right, all the crazy people, have said that the election was unfair. We just simply need to assume, not assume, we need to validate through an effective process we can all agree with that says that the rules of the election were followed appropriately and we can believe in the result. That's a fair thing, right? That's an appropriate thing.
Yeah,
and it
very
Like
much
that
so,
already exists. But here's the thing: by demanding all these additional audits, having all like
doesn't exist
cases,
because to your
like
point,
no,
you
that they
said
were specifically intended.
Stop.
Threshold. You said it.
Stop.
But it was still.
I said stop. I mean, that means everyone stops. I said that at the beginning that's a rule. Okay.
Okay,
Now,
then let me question Maddie.
Well, you didn't even let me say what I was gonna say. We're gonna be wrapping up in a second. So you are gonna question Maddie in a second. You can finish your statement, then Maddie can respond, then we're gonna wrap up. Okay.
Okay, fine. My point, Kat, was that, and you agreed with, I think you agreed with it, was that there should be the ability to audit the outcome of the election, which sort of runs into what Brant was saying. Okay. And the fact that, Maddie, you're saying that we have these rules that say that there's an audit if certain thresholds are met. I think my personal opinion is that those thresholds are too low, and that 0.5% or 1% are too low, and that if state legislatures who are empowered under the Constitution to decide what their method and selection of presidential electors are, they want to revisit what those rules are, and they want to increase those to say that if every election that comes through has to be validated, has to be certified, has to be audited in order to prove the outcome of the election so that we have integrity and we can believe in it, that's totally fine. You can wave your finger, but that's a real thing. And if people believe that the election results are true, then I think we'll have more confidence in the outcomes and we'll all be able to get closer to a more perfect union.
Okay. Maddie?
I don't think that was a question, but I'm gonna answer anyway.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so
will
like
hear
all those things that you said, like we should have this, we should have this. Wouldn't it be great if we had all these processes and institutions in place that would ensure that elections are not only held fairly, but that the confidence of it provides confidence to the people that they believe and they trust those institutions. Like, here's the thing. These things exist. No, I'm answering your question. You got shush.
Okay,
these things exist. These things exist, which is so great, right? I know it must blow your mind that someone else thought this through ahead before you ever did. But like, turns out people had came up with the concept of like, hey, maybe we should have processes and things like safeguards in place so that we can make sure that these elections can be conducted not only with integrity, but it also holds the trust of the people so that when the results come through, when the results are audited, when the results are then recertified by state legislatures, that people can trust that these are the correct results. Like, these things already exist. And I'm not done yet. No, I'm not done yet. What I'm also saying is that the purpose of all of these court cases and these additional calls for auditing, They were specifically designed and intended to erode trust in our country's institutions, in all of these different processes that are already in place. That was their explicit goal, was to erode the public trust in things that already exist. So that there are people like you sitting here saying, wouldn't it be nice? Audits and all these other things that already fucking exist.
Okay, we're wrapping it up
Yeah,
now.
I'm going to save my
Wait.
response until the closing. So,
Okay.
but I got an answer for that.
Okay, we're wrapping up now. Everybody, please make sure that when you plug your ending statement, you also plug your channel so people know where to find you. I want to thank you all for coming on today. And everybody in chat, please do, once again, go to DylanBurnsTV on YouTube and subscribe. We are pushing really hard to hit 50,000 subscribers. We appreciate it. Any support to the channel is much appreciated. Gun, we're throwing it over to Brant.
Yeah, I mean the audit was a nothing burger, and I'm really still very strongly passionate about the fact that there should be easily achievable means to keep doing audits. We shouldn't just always trust your government. You should always be skeptical of your government. Never trust a Fed. All that being said, I appreciate being on the panel tonight. You can find me at twitch.tv/BrantForLiberty. I cover, like I said, a variety of different things that are going on politically, culturally throughout the world, mainly liberty-based movements, activism, stuff like that. If you want to stop by, drop me a follow. Like I said, twitch.tv/BrantForLiberty. Appreciate being on here, Dylan. Nice to meet the new people that were on the panel tonight, and it was a great debate. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to throw it over to Denims.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I feel like there's been a lot of cope on the right talking about how like well, I didn't actually care about the audits at all. I actually didn't even care about Arizona even a little bit. And it's like, okay, sure, whatever you say. And I just think it's just a little bit ironic that conservatives are asking for us to do all of these audits for our elections, which I'm not against, despite them saying that there's too much bureaucracy and red tape around everything and that we should be reducing it. But you know what? I'm on board for doing more audits and, proving that who we have elected is in fact supposed to be elected and that it's not someone else. I'm in favor. Yeah, I'm Denims. I stream at 7 a.m. PST and I do politics, and that's me.
Okay. We're gonna throw it over now to Spartacus.
Okay. And you can search through my entire Twitter. I don't think I posted one thing about the Arizona audit because at the very beginning I thought it was gonna be a nothing burger. I really didn't care about the Arizona audit. What I cared about was the Texas Supreme Court case, which I think I've made that supremely clear. Is that the Supreme Court case was what mattered, not the Arizona audit. I don't think the Arizona audit was going to come up with anything, which in fact it really didn't in the long run. And so I don't think the election would have been overturned by the Supreme Court case, but I think it would have provided confidence to voters that thought that they may have been cheated out of an election. I think it would have provided that confidence. I think that would have been the better way to go about things. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court negligent negliged. I don't even know how to say that word. Whatever.
Neglect.
Failed to uphold their constitutional duty to hear a original jurisdiction case by the state of Texas, and I think 19 other states followed up behind Texas. And so 20 states, the Supreme Court failed to oblige to their constitutional duty to hear the case. So I think that's a pretty big failure by the Supreme Court, whether it be conservative or not. Still a big failure. And I am DSpraticus. You can find me at twitch.tv/DSpraticus, twitter.com/DSpraticus.
Okay, next is gonna be Kat.
Heyo. Okay, so essentially for this.
Well, I'm the one who pays the bills. You're sub to DylanBurnsTV on Twitch. Maddie? Okay, I'm kidding. Go on.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You about to sleep outside, bitch. Okay. Anyways, so hello. My feelings about this are: I think everybody is entitled to have an audit. Just when you get the audit and you get the results, even if you want certain results, just take the results. If you truly believe in our system, and if you don't, then well, I have a really great country for you. It has nice beaches and no government. It's called Haiti. You won't get any audits. Things will be cheap. Good luck. Okay, so and I'm allowed to make that joke because I am Haitian. So okay. Other than that, I'm a Katarina. I am a physicist and rocket person and science person overall. Cat is back, baby. I am back on panels. Get fucked. And don't subscribe to Dylan. He's awful. And also, for anyone that doesn't know,
True.
I am a Dylan's girlfriend person.
And I scared
And
Hunter
I'm just-
Avallone off, which is
Is
why
this
Teflon
new?
is here.
Is this
Yeah.
new information?
There's what new information?
Dylan's
the
girlfriend person.
girlfriend person. Yeah. I no, I don't think so. I think it's just the look. Who else is he gonna get to fill in for Hunter Avallone at fucking 11 o'clock at night?
That's true.
Loner?
It's too bad I scared him off.
Logistical facts.
Yeah, fuck, it's really funny. I think there was a polling agency that simulated the excuse me, American election in the UK, and it would have turned out that like the Democrats, Biden, Trump would have won like every seat. They would have had like 630. They would have had the whole house. Like, yeah, sometimes just electoral results reflect the fact that the orange man is in fact bad. I don't know. I was really fucking. I felt like I was maybe being a bit paranoid when I came in here saying that like, oh, this isn't about questioning the results anymore. Now this is about setting a precedent to obstruct future elections. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening, because you say that it's going to provide confidence to voters. How much has been debunked since this happened? Whether like all the way back from Rudy Giuliani and that other crazy lady, like how much has been pushed back? And still, like there was a poll from like last month that just said that like a third of Republicans think that Trump's coming back this year. 50% think he's like the rightful president. It's fucking, it's, and that's the point, is like the thing about like passionately defending what auditing systems that already exist, or this like weird constitutional thing that the Supreme Court's like obligated to hear every weird case that's brought toward. It's like, I feel like the thing's actually already happening. That eroded trust in democracy is already there. And like, yeah, this is going to be used like kind of maliciously next time as well. I just, yeah, well, good luck to you guys.
Yeah, right.
Next
You could just
is
get more votes, but you know.
next can be more perfect union.
Oh my God. Yes. No, you know what? You are Luderbox. Sorry, Lonerbox. You are. I said Luder. Luder got me first involved in the. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, Lonerbox. Seriously, you are more correct and more wrong than you think at the same time. The whole argument about Jesus Christ, why I hear
That's
an
me. Sorry.
Okay.
I had you on my phone too, so I could go take a leak.
No, that's fine. The whole argument, right, about the Arizona audit is less about like trying to prove, which is what the left is trying to hang their hat on, what everybody who hates the orange guy, that it's about trying to prove that there was a systemic election fraud. That's not what the problem was, right? Problem in this country is that people have low faith in the confidence of their elections because the way in which they're conducted. When you say universal mail-in balloting, but you don't require the ballot rolls to be validated to say that everybody who gets a ballot is in fact a legal authorized voter. Fucking let everybody vote. Even if you want to say everybody can vote, prior convicted felons, whatever, let them all vote. But just validate that that's the individual who's actually fucking voting. We don't have that. And the problem is, and why this seems to be a problem, is that people on the left advocate that it's not necessary to clean voter rolls, and their arguments notwithstanding, that there may be people out there who want to disenfranchise people, potentially disenfranchise people, or because they believe that they might vote a certain way. I think that That should be a crime. We should all, as American citizens, reach out against it. You're not an American citizen, so I get it that you don't care that much. Looking at it from some people are looking at this as a pure democratic ploy. This is a constitutional republic. Okay? And we vote based on the rules of our states. The Constitution gives the state legislatures, the rules, the permission, the authority to set up the rules by which those elections account. Okay. And when the federal government or others simply try to use like social mores or whatever to try to change that, I think it's a problem. And we need to try to figure out how to make the system work, and that we can validate that the people who are being elected, okay, are with an assured value that everything is good. I feel like I've sort of lost my track, so I apologize to everybody. But you get what I maybe. You
But
get
where
what I'm
can they
saying.
find you?
On your own streams, but that's fine.
Okay, next is going to be
I'm done.
Preacher.
Hey, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. It's my first time actually on the Hippy Dippy. Yeah, when I say I didn't care about the Arizona audit, I truly didn't care. Like I said, I don't live in the past. I believe Biden won. I don't believe it was by as many votes, but I don't think it was enough to overturn an election. Unfortunately, yes, there's fraud in elections. I think it's moronic and asinine that should be, but politics is an ugly game, I guess. Thank God I'm not a politician. I can be an honest person. But yeah, I don't want to see people looking at 2020 as a reason to not vote in 2022 and 2024. People on the right are saying that, they're throwing in the towel, and I think that's just as asinine as anything. You got to get out there and vote. There's going to be fraud, whether we like it or not. So yeah, there should be audits, whether a Republican wins or a Democrat wins, or maybe an independent. That would be really nice. Just saying. Maybe a third party could get involved sometimes. I don't know. Maybe some marijuana could be legalized. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, I didn't care about the audit. To me, it was a waste of time because it is what it is. Even if they came up with something that says, oh my gosh, Trump won, guess what? There's no precedent of what's going to happen. So it doesn't even matter at this point. Let's just move forward, look to the future. If there's anything I learned in my life, is that when you keep looking at the past, you cannot move forward. And I almost knocked down my sheet behind me. That would be bad. So I'm glad this is ending now because I just got into my bottle of moonshine and then I get really honest with everybody. So let me end this as Preacher570. That's where you can find me on Twitch and probably all the same on other social media, but I just use my other social media to drive towards Twitch. So Preacher570, I do a variety of streaming. And MPU forgot to tell you he's at More Perfect Union at Twitch too. Ha!
Wonderful. Now
I
we're going to throw
love
it
you.
over.
Thank you so much for that. I apologize.
What a friend.
What a champ. Now we're
A
going to
good
throw it
man.
over.
A good man indeed.
Now we're going to throw it over to Maddie to wrap the show up.
Great. Yeah. First of all, now I wish I had moonshine right now. That sounds great. So enjoy. But yeah, as it turns out, all of these safeguards that people are demanding are put into place to ensure the integrity of our elections. Wouldn't you know it? They already are there. So who would have thunk it? It's almost like all of these challenges to the results are simply intended to erode trust among the public, setting the stage for something far more widespread and grandiose next time. Wouldn't you know it? But that's me. I'll take off my tinfoil hat because that's, of course, not the case. The cyber ninjas were like very much serious about uncovering real fraud. I never doubted them for a second. And if you did, shame on you. Shame on you. Hi, I'm Maddie. I stream on Twitch as MaddieCakes_. You can also find me on Twitter as Madsmaru, spelled MADSMARU. I talk about politics and lots of other good stuff. I do interviews with interesting people. And I just like to have fun and be silly. So this
War
is
room.
great. Yeah. Oh, and of course, and Sprouticus and I do a podcast together called The War Room, where we talk about important topics, and it is a bi-weekly podcast, and you should for sure check it out. A week from Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. It is very enjoyable, and we play nice mostly.
Thank you, everybody, for coming by. I am tired. I'm gonna go sleep. And thank you all for coming to what is the 40 whatever the hell episode of the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. Please do check out all of our guests, and thank you for tuning in. See you guys later.